Chapter 356. Alright, since that's the case, we'll spare his life, but we'll have to keep him in check, Thunderflame said. I understand, Thunderflame replied respectfully, then turned to his subordinates. Send him to the prison. Father. Thunderflame stood up and said unhappily, I was the one who caught that ice face. Why did you give him to brother? That horse is too fierce for you to handle, Thunderflame said. You can have the woman. Liam-O was carried all the way to a secret cell, where he was thrown into it. Liam-O, is that you? After an unknown period of time, a familiar voice rang out beside Liam-O's ear. Liam-O opened his eyes and saw that the person squatting beside him was none other than the person he had been searching for, Qin Feng. Qin Feng, Liam-O called out, then coughed twice. You're injured. Qin Feng helped Liam-O sit up against the wall. I'm fine, Liam-O replied. Thunderflame's cultivation is truly unfathomable. I didn't even have the strength to fight back. Fortunately, he didn't kill me. Although Thunderflame hadn't killed Liam-O, he had injured his heart meridian. Liam-O's spatial ring had been taken away, and without spiritual medicine to aid him, it would take some time for his heart meridian to heal on its own. It's good that I found you. There'll always be a chance to get out, Liam-O said as he scanned the surroundings. Indeed, Liam-O hadn't explored this cell before. There was actually a secret dungeon here. This cell is beneath Thunderflames, Qin Feng explained. But he rarely comes down here. Usually, only those who deliver food will come down here, and that's only once every 3 or 4 days. While a meal every 3 or 4 days was nothing to Liam-O, who didn't need to eat, Qin Feng was in a constant state of hunger, and he didn't even have the energy to cultivate. Liam-O's gaze swept across the room before landing on a corner of the wall. There was a person lying there, silent and lifeless, as if he were a dead person. Who is he? Liam-O asked. I don't know, Qin Feng replied. Qin Feng replied, when I first came in, I thought he was a dead man. He usually doesn't move and only occasionally gets up to eat when the food is served. After that, he goes back to lie down and doesn't say a word. They must be criminals like us. Liam-O nodded, averting his gaze from the cowering figure. Liam-O, why are you alone? Where's Yun Ruoyan and Zhui Feng? Didn't they come with you? Yes. There were a total of 30 students who came together, but they were all separated. Right now, there's only you, me, and a student named Lin Qingchen in the manor. AI. Qin Feng sighed. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a very small voice coming from the corner of the wall. Qin Feng shut his mouth and gave Liam-O a meaningful look before both of their gazes landed on the figure in the corner of the room. That figure was the source of the small voice. The voice grew louder and louder. Perhaps because he hadn't spoken for a long time, his voice was hoarse and strange, but Liam-O could vaguely make out what he was saying. Lin Qingchen, Yun Ruoyan, Yun Ruoyan. Liam-O frowned. Do you know Lin Qingchen and Yun Ruoyan? The voice paused, and after a long while, it finally spat out 3 words, I know him. Who are you? Liam-O asked as he straightened his back. The black shadow finally moved slowly. He turned over with great difficulty. Under the weak light, the person's face was completely covered by his white and withered hair. It was impossible to see his appearance. Qin Feng walked over and helped him up. He leaned against the wall, facing Liam-O. Even these simple actions caused the figure to gasp for breath. I'm Lin Tianming, the eldest son of Lin Zainan. The figure finally revealed his identity. You're Lin Tianming. Liam-O exclaimed. Liam-O had sent people to investigate the Lin family, so he naturally knew about the sudden disappearance of Lin Zainan's 2 sons. However, he had never expected to meet the man who had disappeared so many years ago in this alternate world's prison. It's the real deal. the man said as he combed the hair covering his forehead to the sides, revealing his facial features. His face was pale and devoid of blood, but his features were still handsome and somewhat similar to Lin Zainan's. The Lin Qingchen you mentioned is my daughter, Lin Tianming continued. Yun Ruoyan is my sister's child, my niece. After Lin Tianming finished speaking, he leaned against the wall. His face was even paler. The long period of imprisonment had tortured this handsome man to the point where he was half dead. Senior, you should have a younger brother, right? Where is he? Liu Mo asked after a while. He's dead. Lin Tianming's answer confirmed Li Mo's suspicions. He pointed to the corner of the wall where he had been lying. He died there, and I buried his body there. Lin Tianming closed his eyes, his breathing becoming so weak that if one didn't pay attention, one would really think that he was dead. He's in a state of suspended animation, Qin Feng continued. I'm sure that's how he managed to survive all these years of imprisonment. There were only two possibilities for someone to survive in such a state. One was that they had a deep-seated hatred that they couldn't close their eyes until their vengeance had been avenged, and the other was that they had something extremely important to report to someone. It was unknown which of these two possibilities Lin Tianming had, or perhaps both. Yun Ruoyan sat cross-legged in the wilderness for an entire day and night. When she opened her eyes, they shone brightly. She closed her eyes once more, sensing that her spiritual vortex had grown by half its original size, and that it was brimming with spiritual energy. She couldn't hide the excitement in her heart. In the span of a day and a night, she had successfully advanced from 8th rank to 9th rank through a few simple incantations from the Divine Dragon technique. It was truly a frightening speed. Yun Ruoyan walked up to the long-faced warrior's side and took away his ownerless spiritual energy, a fire-attuned sword, and a fire-attuned spear. Although they couldn't compare to Qi Tong's, their power wasn't to be underestimated. Yun Ruoyan also took a spatial ring from him, within which were quite a few spiritual herbs, as well as a spirit crystal the size of an egg. However, this spirit crystal was a faint yellow, not the pure white that Yun Ruoyan had seen before. Moreover, Yun Ruoyan found that the spiritual energy contained within this spirit crystal couldn't compare to hoodlums. Based on this, Yun Ruoyan deduced that spirit crystals had different grades, and that hoodlums was definitely of a higher grade than the long-faced warriors. Yun Ruoyan also found a pouch of money within the ring, which was filled with small, grayish-white stones. Each stone also contained a small amount of spiritual energy. These were the lowest-grade spirit crystals that Yun Ruoyan had seen hoodlum use before. Yun Ruoyan looted the long-faced warrior's body of all useful items, then burned him to ash with a ball of spiritual fire. Then, she mounted her sword in the direction of the caravan. When the caravan discovered that the long-faced warrior was missing, they only waited for half a day before continuing on their journey. If they missed the agreed time, they would be punished, so they couldn't care less about the long-faced warrior. By the time Yun Ruoyan caught up with the caravan, they were still half a day away from their destination. There was no time for Yun Ruoyan to wait any longer, so she stepped on her sword and blocked the path of the caravan. Where did this ungrateful brat come from? How dare you block the Thunder family's caravan? Are you tired of living? A burly man walked out of the caravan and berated Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan was currently wearing the clothes that she had found in the long-faced warrior's ring. Her original clothes had been stained with too much blood, so she had burned them. The long-faced warrior's clothes were too big, and Yun Ruoyan looked like a child who had stolen an adult's clothes. It was no wonder that the burly man had called her an ungrateful brat. But Yun Ruoyan didn't say a word. She stepped onto the spiritual sword she had just retrieved and charged at the burly man with Qi Tong in her hand. The burly man's cultivation was about the same as Yun Ruoyan's, but Yun Ruoyan's sudden and ferocious attacks put him at a disadvantage. Coupled with Yun Ruoyan's Qi Tong, the burly man found it difficult to withstand her attacks. In a moment of carelessness, Yun Ruoyan's Qi Tong pierced through his chest, and he died on the spot. The other three warriors hadn't taken Yun Ruoyan seriously at first, but when one of their companions died, they grew nervous and surrounded Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan was facing three opponents by herself, and even though none of them were weaker than Yun Ruoyan, she didn't fear them in the slightest. She didn't know why she was so confident in herself, but she was certain that she could take on all three of them at once. "Are you going to come at me together, or one by one?" Yun Ruoyan challenged. The three of them glanced at each other, puzzled. They could clearly tell that Yun Ruoyan was only a 9th-rank blade master, so how could she be so arrogant? But because one of their companions had just died at Yun Ruoyan's hands, they didn't dare underestimate her. "Come at me together." The three of them shouted in unison, and three figures charged at Yun Ruoyan simultaneously. Yun Ruoyan used the Qi Tong to block two of their attacks, but the third managed to cut her arm. Strangely, however, the wound on her body quickly healed itself, and she was as good as new. "My guess was right," Yun Ruoyan thought. The dragon energy that the demonic eye had left in Yun Ruoyan's body not only helped her cultivate the divine dragon technique more quickly, but also allowed her to quickly recover from her injuries. As a result, Yun Ruoyan no longer cared about her own safety. She focused on attacking without defending, becoming as dangerous as a cheetah. The three warriors who had attacked Yun Ruoyan were also injured by Yun Ruoyan. But while Yun Ruoyan was able to heal herself quickly, the three warriors couldn't. In the second round, the three warriors were injured even more severely, but Yun Ruoyan was able to heal herself quickly. In the fourth round, Yun Ruoyan killed two of the three warriors, but she healed herself quickly. In the fifth round, the last warrior was killed by Yun Ruoyan in despair. Chapter 357. Sister Ruoyan, it's really you. You're here to save me. As soon as Yun Ruoyan opened the carriage, Lin Qingxue leapt into Yun Ruoyan's embrace, and Yun Ruoyan patted her back to comfort her. It's all right. I'll take you away. Thank you for saving me." A female voice spoke up from behind Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan turned around and saw Xue Jie. Her face had recovered to about 80% of its original state, so Yun Ruoyan recognized her immediately. "You're welcome. Where are you going?" Yun Ruoyan asked. Xue Jie walked closer to Yun Ruoyan. "We have something important to do, and we'd like to invite you to join us. Would you be willing to join us?" "What's the matter?" Yun Ruoyan asked curiously. "To steal spirit crystals," Xue Jie answered without hiding anything. Xue Jie told her everything about her family's situation regarding spirit crystals. "With the help of spirit crystals, we'll definitely be able to advance our cultivation to a whole new level," Xue Jie continued. The fatty, the black-faced man, and the others all nodded in agreement. Lin Qingxue and Zhuo Yifeng also nodded in agreement. They'd never cultivated with spirit crystals before, but they'd been longing for it just by listening to others talk about it. "This is indeed a rare opportunity," Zhuo Yifeng commented. Zhuo Yifeng said, "Spirit crystal stones are absolutely essential for survival on the Qingyuan continent, and they can also help us break through our cultivation." Yun Ruoyan thought about it for a moment, then finally nodded in agreement under the attentive gazes of those around her. The fatty, black-faced man, and two other beastkin men disguised themselves as warriors, while Yun Ruoyan blended into the prisoner's carriage and was driven to their destination. Within the carriage, Yun Ruoyan hurriedly wrote a letter to Liemo, detailing the current situation and what she was going to do next. She then tied the letter to Imo's leg and had it deliver the letter to Liemo. Yun Ruoyan leaned against the carriage, watching as Imo's shadow grew smaller and smaller. Only then did she look away. Ever since their wedding, the two of them had been inseparable. After such a long time apart, Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but miss him. "I wonder if Liemo has managed to rescue Master Qin. Hopefully, he'll be able to do so as soon as possible and reunite with me." After Lin Tianming entered a state of suspended animation, Li Mo and Qin Feng didn't know how many days and nights they had spent in the dungeon. All they knew was that someone had come to deliver food. Li Mo's portion of the meal was given to Qin Feng, who enjoyed it immensely. Lin Tianming had been saving food for him. Qin Feng said that Lin Tianming always ate whenever he woke up. After some time, Li Mo's external injuries had mostly healed, but the injury to his heart hadn't completely healed. One day, while Li Mo was meditating as usual, he heard footsteps approaching. Someone announced the result loudly, then two men stepped forward and dragged the stocky man away. What a useless piece of trash! The Wang family head roared angrily at the man. He then took out a dagger and stabbed it into the man's chest in front of everyone. The man died on the spot. Throw him into the wild and feed him to the wild dogs, the Wang family head said with disgust. When Li Mo saw this scene, even he couldn't help but frown, and his gaze toward the Wang family head grew colder. When the Wang family head sensed Li Mo's gaze, he roared, "What are you looking at? If you lose, you'll end up the same way. This is the rule of the slave duels. Crippled slaves are useless, and their only fate is death." The next 3 matches were all unsurprisingly won by Li Mo. The slaves were all from low-tier continents, and their cultivation ranged from 8th rank to 9th rank. Their combat style was primarily physical, and their spiritual energy attacks were secondary. How could they possibly be a match for Li Mo? The slaves who lost were also executed on the spot. This was clearly a murder banquet. The last match was between Li Mo and the Feng family servant. A handsome young man in a brocade robe walked up to Li Mo. "Young master, it's been more than a month. How have you been?" The young man bowed slightly to Li Mo. Li Mo recognized him as the one who'd been bitten by Zhong Yang. "I'm still alive," Li Mo replied. "You're no match for me." "It's fine. My family head is benevolent, and Fingbua is my uncle, so he'll take care of me." "Young master, feel free to fight." When Li Mo heard this, he couldn't help but glance at the Feng family head a few more times. He was a hale and hearty old man, and Fingbua stood behind him, while Fingbua sat beside him. Judging from their age, they seemed to be grandfather and grandson. Let the duel begin. Unlike the other slaves, the young man didn't immediately attack Li Mo to seize the initiative. Instead, he stood in place and used a wood-based external technique, the vine technique. Half of the vines formed a net in front of the young man, while the other half attacked Li Mo like an octopus. Li Mo remained motionless, allowing the octopus-like vines to wrap around him and pull him toward the young man. When Li Mo wasn't far from the young man, an invisible layer of ice crystal appeared on his body. As soon as the spiritual energy barrier formed over Li Mo's body, the vines began to tighten, and barbs began to sprout from the vines. If not for Li Mo's sturdy defenses, he would have been pierced into a porcupine or even strangled to death. However, the defenses of a second-level sword master were absolutely monstrous. Against those below that level, their attacks were even more frightening. Li Mo reached out and tore away the vines that had trapped him. It was as if Li Mo had opened a door, and he stepped out of it. Then, he continued to pull away the vines in front of the handsome young master. Chapter 358. Fatty, Lao He, and 2 other beast men disguised themselves as slave escorts, while Yun Ruoyan's coachman kept them under the influence of her intoxicating powder. The group continued on their way to the mine. By nightfall, the group finally arrived at the mine. From afar, it looked like a tall stone wall had encircled the vein mine like an iron bucket. There were guards at the top of the wall, and Lao He hurried up to greet them. The stone gates slowly opened, and 4 caged carriages carrying nearly 100 people entered. "Brother warriors, why do you look so unfamiliar?" The guard who opened the door asked Fatty, Ol, Black, and the others. He was a dark-skinned, rough man in his 40s. Clearly, he was quite familiar with the escorting warriors from before. Lao He frowned and glared at the guard. The fat man quickly interjected, "Our former brothers have been assigned other tasks. In the future, we brothers will be in charge of escorting slaves. Slowly, we won't meet each other anymore." "Oh, right, right. Brothers, please come in," the guard hurriedly said. He had only been asking casually. On the Gongyuan continent, warriors enjoyed a high status, and it wasn't unusual for them to kill someone if they were unhappy. As a result, the guard didn't dare ask any further questions. "Where's the supervisor?" Lao He asked seriously. "He's at the mine." The guard led the group to a row of stone houses. Each house had an iron door, and those were probably where the slaves were kept. The guard led the group to an empty house and opened the stone door. Everyone disembarked from the caged carriages and entered the house one by one. Yun Ruoyan followed the group out of the caged carriages. She saw that about a dozen rooms were empty. "Where are the slaves? Why isn't there a single one here?" Fatty asked the guard. "They've all gone to the mine," the guard replied. A few days ago, when they were exploring the mine, they discovered an extremely dense spiritual energy seeping out from the depths of the mine. The supervisor suspected that there might be saint-grade spirit stones, so he sent everyone there to mine as soon as possible. Saint-grade spirit stones. Fatty and Lao Hei's eyes lit up at the same time. They turned to Yun Ruoyan and Xue Jie, who was standing by her side. Yun Ruoyan could also sense that Xue Jie's breathing had quickened. In the afternoon, while they were on the road, Yun Ruoyan had asked Xue Jie about the specifics of spirit crystals. She learned that they were divided into 3 grades: low grade, mid grade, and high grade. Low-grade spirit stones contained weak spiritual energy and could be used as currency for transactions. Mid-grade spirit stones contained medium spiritual energy and could be used for cultivation, but the effect was average. High-grade spirit stones contained abundant spiritual energy and were the best supplement for cultivation. The spirit crystals that Hoodlum, Xue Jie, and the Fatty had given Li Mo were all high-grade, while the ones that Yun Ruoyan had taken from the long-faced warrior were mid-grade. Xue Jie told Yun Ruoyan that sacred-grade spirit stones were extremely rare. It was said that if one carried a sacred-grade spirit stone the size of an egg with them, they wouldn't need to refine spiritual energy from the heavens and earth. Instead, it would automatically replenish the spiritual energy in one's spiritual vortex. After Yun Ruoyan's group entered the stone house, Fatty, Blackie, and the other 2 warriors left with the guards. In the middle of the night, Fatty Qian and Blackie entered the stone hut to discuss with Yun Ruoyan and the others how they were going to acquire the mine. "Damn, we're so lucky!" Blackie exclaimed excitedly. "I was only hoping to get some high-grade spirit stones, but I didn't expect to find a sacred-grade mine." "That's right." Fatty Qian was just as excited as Blackie. "As long as I can get my hands on a sacred-grade spirit stone, it won't be a dream for me to break through to become a sword saint." As soon as Fatty Qian said this, everyone's eyes lit up. Now, the question before them was how they were going to acquire the mine. "Those guards are all below 9th rank Blade Master cultivation," Yun Ruoyan explained. "I can deal with them with my bewitching powder." When Yun Ruoyan had used bewitching powder on the coachman, everyone had seen how effective it was, and they all nodded in agreement. "I'll have to rely on the 2 of you to deal with the steward and the guards above 9th rank, Yun Ruoyan said to Blackie and Fatty Qian. Blackie and Fatty Qian glanced at each other, and Fatty Qian said, "It's not that I'm afraid of death, but with our cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem for us to deal with 2 or 3 of our peers. However, according to the guard, the steward and the guards around him are all mid-rank blade masters and above, so we definitely won't be their match. Use this." Yun Ruoyan took out a black porcelain bottle. "If we can't beat them, we can use poison. Put this in our food and drink, and even if it doesn't kill them, it'll at least cripple them. The poison in the bottle was something that Chocho had recently taught Yun Ruoyan to concoct. As Yun Ruoyan's cultivation had increased, so had the poison that she could concoct. It wasn't until the next day that the steward and his entourage returned from the mines. If Yun Ruoyan had been present, she would have recognized him at a glance as the head of the Zhang family, a rather capable middle-aged man who had entertained the steward that day. In fact, the Zhang family was also a servant of the Pai family. They were in charge of managing the crystal spirit stone vein for the Pai family. There were no less than 100 slave families like the Zhang family and the Pai family. Chapter 359. The brocade-robed man had come to recruit Li Mo on behalf of the Feng family. I can join forces against the Thunderbolt family, but I don't think there's a need for me to submit, Li Mo replied. Brotherly, the brocade-robed man continued, if you want to establish yourself on the continent, you'll have to rely on a powerful family. Of the 7 great families, the Thunderbolt family is the Feng family. The Thunderbolt family is cruel, and they're not suitable for us. The Feng family, on the other hand, is merciful. Now that the head of the family favors you, you'll surely have a high position in the Feng family. I appreciate the Feng family's goodwill, but I've made up my mind. I can join forces against the Thunderbolt family, but there's no need for me to submit. Li Mo has no intention of becoming a slave, Li Mo interrupted. All right, the brocade-robed man said regretfully, I'll convey your intentions to the head of the family. The brocade-robed man cupped his fists toward Li Mo and was about to leave when Li Mo called out to him from behind. Tell the young master to be careful of the woman by his side, Li Mo instructed. She's possessed by a demonic spirit, and her body carries corpse poison. The person who bit you was the one who was attacked by her. Last night, during the duel, Li Mo had seen a woman standing behind Feng Xian. It was Yi Qianying. That ghost had some tricks up her sleeves. Using Yi Qianying's gentle appearance and seductive methods, she had turned from a slave into Feng Xian's personal maid in a short period of time. Last night, although she kept her head down and hid herself behind the crowd, she didn't escape Li Mo's eyes. The brocade-robed man frowned and cupped his fists once more. Thank you for the reminder, brotherly. Led by the guards, Yun Ruoyan's party walked on the rugged mountain path for a full 4 hours before they finally saw the mine. It was a barren mountain of white rocks. There was not even a single blade of grass growing on it. The white rocks were somewhat glaring under the sunlight. At the foot of the mountain, hundreds of slaves were busily working. The sounds of stones being smashed, the guards yelling, and the sound of whips striking flesh echoed throughout the valley. Get to work. None of you are allowed to slack off. If we can't dig through the mine by today, you're not allowed to sleep at night. You're not allowed to eat either. The guard held a long whip in his hand and pointed at a group of emaciated and exhausted slaves as he shouted. Sister Ruoyan. Lin Qingxue tugged on Yun Ruoyan's arm and whispered, This isn't a mine, it's a living hell. Yun Ruoyan didn't say anything, only patting her on the back. Who is the person in charge here? The fatty sat on a big rock and shouted at the top of his voice. He was wearing the warrior clothes of the Thunderbolt clan and looked like a ferocious warrior, which was quite intimidating. The guard who was swinging the whip immediately trotted over. He ran all the way to the fat man and asked respectfully, Sir Warrior, I am the little manager of this place. What are you doing here? Before he could finish his sentence, Yun Ruoyan stepped forward and sprinkled a handful of bewitching powder on his face. Gather all the guards here, Yun Ruoyan ordered. In less than 5 minutes, a dozen or so guards had been gathered. All of them were 9th-rank blade masters. In a one-on-one fight, none of them would be a match for Yun Ruoyan, but if they all attacked her together, it would be very troublesome. Brothers. The fat man turned to the 20 guards and said, I'm here on behalf of the Thunderbolt family's patriarch to express his condolences. When the patriarch heard that a Saint Great Spirit crystal stone appeared in our lode, he was very happy and sent me to bring some good wine to reward everyone. When the Saint Great Spirit crystal stone appears, the patriarch will certainly reward everyone. Lao He poured a jug of wine into a dozen or so large bowls for the guards to drink. The guards looked at each other, but none of them stepped forward. "Thank you, patriarch." The guard who had been bewitched by Yun Ruoyan stepped forward and downed a bowl of wine without hesitation. Only then did the other guard step forward and drink as well. Yun Ruoyan counted down from 10 in her mind, and the guards all died at the same time. Yun Ruoyan didn't immediately release the slaves. First, the Thunderbolt family's methods of dealing with escaped slaves were extremely cruel, and second, in their current state, they would all die if they left the mine. As a result, Yun Ruoyan ordered the guards to bring all the slaves back to camp so that they could rest. In less than 2 hours, only Yun Ruoyan, Lin Qingxue, Shui Feng, and the Beastkin tribe remained. Yun Ruoyan had learned from the butler that the sacred mine was about to be excavated, so the group immediately entered the mine. Yun Ruoyan had sent Mo, to deliver a letter to Li Mo. On this day, it was about to arrive at Thunderbolt City. In the wilderness outside the city, it saw a sparkling lake below, and it wanted to drink some water. Suddenly, a black, dog-like beast leaped out of nowhere and pounced at Mo. Mo was caught off guard, and its claws were caught in the sky-swallowing beast's mouth. Mo reacted quickly, and with a long howl, its body instantly grew larger in midair. Only then did it manage to keep its claws in the sky-swallowing beast's mouth, but it still ended up bleeding profusely. Mo's cultivation was equivalent to that of a 9th-rank human blade master, while a sky-swallowing beast's cultivation was equivalent to that of a peak 9th-rank human blade master. Mo was no match for the beast, so it turned around and fled. The sky-swallowing beast leaped a second time in midair and bit down on Mo's neck. Mo struggled with all its might, but a large chunk of flesh was torn off its neck, sending feathers flying everywhere. Mo let out a long, mournful wail, and the sky-swallowing beast felt its head spin as it fell from the sky. Only then did Mo have a chance to escape. The sky-swallowing beast stumbled a few steps, shook its head, and gradually regained its senses. It wanted to continue chasing after Mo, but was stopped by Thunderbolt Badian. The sky-swallowing beast roared at Mo's disappearing figure, then ran up to Thunderbolt Badian's horse and spat out a scroll of paper on the ground. A warrior with a bow on his back picked up the scroll and handed it to Thunderbolt Badian. As soon as Thunderbolt Badian unfolded the scroll, his brows furrowed tightly. What a bold gopher! How dare she plot against the Thunderbolt family? Does she not know how to spell the word death? The scroll of paper crumbled into powder in Thunderbolt Badian's hand. Brother, what's the matter? Thunderbolt Yang galloped over and asked when he saw Thunderbolt Badian's expression. If I'm not mistaken, this must be the handiwork of that gopher you keep mentioning, Yun Ruoyan. Thunderbolt Badian tossed the scroll to Thunderbolt Yang. Thunderbolt Yang looked at the words on the scroll. It was addressed to Li Mo, and she had called herself Yen. Who else could it be? This woman must have eaten a leopard's gall. Thunderbolt Yang exclaimed after reading the contents of the letter. I wonder if she's as fast as a leopard when it comes to escaping. After Thunderclap Badian finished speaking, he led his small hunting team towards the direction of the spirit crystal stone vein. Thunderclap Yang also hurriedly urged his horse to follow. Li Mo fed Lin Tianming the spiritual pill he had obtained from the brocade-robed youth and gave the spirit crystal to Qin Feng. The two of them finally began to recover. The frequency at which Lin Tianming entered a state of suspended animation decreased, and Qin Feng's cultivation finally broke through to the peak of 9th rank, allowing him to hold his own against the Thunderbolt family's elite warriors. Li Mo really wanted to tell Yun Ruoyan that he had found Lin Tianming. Over the past few days, he had tried to whistle for Mo, but there was no response. He even tried to communicate with Chirp, but to no avail. Gradually, Liemo began to feel uneasy. That night, Liemo once again whistled from the window of the woodshed, but there was no response. Just as he was about to close the window, a small bird flew in from outside. The bird's body was soaked in blood, and it fell to the ground as soon as it entered the room. Liemo reached out to catch it. Liemo called out as he looked at the dying bird in his palm. A large chunk of flesh had been bitten off its neck, and its blood vessels had ruptured. The bird had lost too much blood, and it didn't look like it was going to survive. Liemo's gaze landed on Mo's claws, which had also been badly mangled. He guessed that Yunruoyan must have sent Mo to deliver a letter to him, but that the letter had been snatched away halfway. There was no other possibility that Libation sky-swallowing beast could have left such a wound on Mo's body. Liemo narrowed his eyes, growing increasingly worried for Yunruoyan. That night, when the brocade-robed youth once more came to Liemo to persuade him, Liemo actually agreed to his request. However, he also made a request of his own, for the Feng family to search for Yunruoyan and provide her with protection. Yunruoyan's party didn't know that Li Batian had already arrived. They followed their plan and entered the spirit crystal mine, which was a tunnel 1,000 feet deep. The Beastcloth tribe was good at hunting and mining. The ancestor of the Beastcloth tribe who brought back the spirit crystal stones was a person who was responsible for prospecting in the spirit crystal stone mine. The fatty, old Sable, and the other Beastkin clansmen led the way, Yunruoyan, Lin Qingxue, and Xue Jie in the middle, and Zhui Feng brought up the rear. Even before they reached the bottom of the mine, they saw a white light emanating from the front. At the same time, they felt an incomparably rich spiritual energy surging up from the depths of the mine. The Saint Grade mine should be right in front of us. Everyone, hurry up. Old Sable's voice came from the front, and the group quickened their pace. After making a turn, a stone wall glowing with white spiritual energy appeared in front of them. We're here. The spirit crystals are just behind this wall, the fatty and old Sable exclaimed excitedly. Although he could see the white light of spiritual power and feel the abundant spiritual power, in fact, there was still a thick layer of low-grade and mid-grade spiritual stones separating him from the saint-grade spirit crystal stone vein. The stone walls that were emitting a white light were made of low-grade spirit stones. There were many traces of digging on them. It was clear that they were the result of the slaves working day and night without rest. More than 20 men from the Beastkin tribe immediately picked up their mining tools and continued to work. It was impossible to determine the exact time at the bottom of the mine, so in the face of the temptation of saint-grade spirit stones, everyone tirelessly continued to mine. Low-grade spirit crystals were pushed out of the tunnel by carts, followed by mid-grade spirit crystals. The white light grew brighter and brighter. Finally, when the last mid-grade spirit crystal was excavated, a clean, jade-like wall appeared in front of them. Chapter 360. It was a stone wall that seemed to be made of white jade. It glowed with a dazzling white spiritual light, and at the same time emitted a chilly aura. At first glance, it was a bit blinding, but after a while, it actually softened. Is this entire wall made of saint-grade spirit stones? Lin Qingxue stared at the jade-like wall with her large, sparkling eyes, incredulous. No, Xue Jie replied. The outer layer is a stone outer coffin, and within that outer coffin is a sacred spirit crystal. Then let's continue. Old He raised the hammer in his hand and smashed it against the jade wall. With a clang, Old He's hammer bounced back, and even Old He was forced back a few steps. Oh my God, why is it so hard? Old He swung his hand, which had gone numb from the impact. Let me try. The fatty didn't believe it. He smashed the wall with his chisel, but he didn't leave a single mark. What should we do? It's right in front of us, but we can't get it. Zhui Feng walked up and touched the wall with his hand, feeling a chill seep into his skin. Ruoyan, try using your scarlet eye sword. He turned to Yun Ruoyan and said, Ruoyan, try using your sword. Yun Ruoyan nodded and took out her scarlet eye. As soon as it came into contact with the cold, jade-like stone, it was as if a piece of hot metal had come into contact with a block of ice. The stone outer coffin, so hard and impenetrable, was cut apart as if it were tofu. As the crowd gasped in shock, Yun Ruoyan finished cutting the outer coffin into pieces, revealing an egg-sized piece of stone crystal, which was a saint-grade spirit crystal, in front of everyone's eyes. Yun Ruoyan reached out and took the egg-sized crystal in her hand. She felt as if 100,000 pores on her body had opened up at once, and a large amount of spiritual energy flowed into her body from the crystal. The feeling of filling her spiritual vortex without the need to deliberately condense it was a wondrous one. Just as Yun Ruoyan was immersed in this wondrous feeling, someone suddenly called out, "Why is there smoke? Is there a fire somewhere?" Yun Ruoyan also noticed that a large amount of smoke was pouring into the tunnel they had come from. As the smoke grew thicker and thicker, everyone couldn't help but cough. Not good, someone is setting the cave on fire. They want to suffocate us to death, Zhuoyifeng said. The smell was unbearable, and they didn't care if there was an ambush at the entrance of the cave. They all ran outside. Zhuoyifeng. As they ran, Yun Ruoyan called out, "No matter what happens, you have to protect Qingxue." Zhuoyifeng glanced at Yun Ruoyan, but before he could give her any time to react, he heard a familiar male voice from the tunnel entrance. "Gophers inside, come out and die." Yun Ruoyan's group dashed out of the thick smoke and ran out of the tunnel. Kicking aside the burning hay at the mouth of the tunnel, they saw a group of about a dozen warriors on horseback glaring at them. "Well done, Yun Ruoyan, and well done to the rats of the Beastkin tribe. Not only did you kill the warriors of my family, but you've even set your sights on my spirit crystal mine. You must be tired of living." The man who spoke was dressed in a red robe. His face was filled with a murderous smile, and he didn't bother to hide his cultivation at all. Only under one circumstance would a cultivator unleash their full cultivation, if they were strong enough, and if they wanted to kill enough. "Let me tell you with my aura, you're dead meat." "Who's this person?" the fatty asked. "His aura is so strong. He must be a sword saint, right? His name is Pai Batian, the young master of the Pai family." "He's a level 2 sword saint," Zhuoyifeng replied. Hearing Zhuoyifeng's words, everyone around him sucked in a breath of cold air. His cultivation base was at level 2 of the Great Perfection realm, which meant that all of them together would not be a match for him. "That can't be, right? I just took a whole bag full of high-grade spirit crystals. Are we going to be able to use them even if we have the life to mine them? Now that things have come to this, let's all focus on preserving our own lives." Yun Ruoyan turned to Lin Qingxue. "Hide behind me later." Lin Qingxue nodded. Although she was nervous, she didn't show any signs of fear. "Yun Ruoyan, hurry up and bring your men here to surrender. If you do, you might be able to keep your life." Thunderclap shouted at Yun Ruoyan. Thunderclap glanced at Thunderclap. "You killed a warrior and tried to steal spirit crystals. The death penalty is unavoidable." "Brother." Thunderclap hurriedly interjected. "You might not know this, but Yun Ruoyan is Li Mo's wife. Haven't you always wanted to subdue Li Mo? With this woman in your hands, you won't have to worry about Li Mo's resistance." "I see." When Thunderclap Batian heard Thunderclap Yang's words, his gaze toward Yun Ruoyan sharpened. "Warriors, listen up. Leave that white-clothed woman alive, and kill everyone else." A dozen or so warriors rushed toward Yun Ruoyan's group, brandishing their swords and sabers. "Everyone, don't stick together. Spread out." Yun Ruoyan called out, and the crowd scattered in all directions. Those who had their weapons taken away by the heaven-flipping mirror when they first arrived were chopped up like vegetables by the warriors on horseback. Soon, more than half of them were killed. Some people with flying spirit tools immediately flew into the sky. However, some warriors also flew into the sky and chased after them on their flying swords. Fatty stood on a pair of chopsticks, while Old Hay stood on a large sword. The two of them stopped a warrior on a khaki-colored sword. Shue Jie, you go first. Fatty turned back to Shue Jie. If we leave together. If we die together. Without another word, Thunderbolt Batian lashed out at Yun Ruoyan with his whip. Yun Ruoyan responded by slashing out with her sword, and the two streaks of red light collided. In the end, the sword wasn't a match for the whip, and it dissipated. As a result, the whip dimmed significantly, and it landed on Yun Ruoyan's body. Yun Ruoyan let out a muffled groan as she fell to the ground from midair. She only managed to stabilize herself after retreating several dozen feet. Sister Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan heard Lin Qingxue yell at her. When she turned her head, she saw that Zhuori Feng and Lin Qingxue were still standing in the same spot. Idiot, hurry up and run. Zhuori Feng, if Qingxue gets hurt, I won't forgive you. When Thunderbolt Batian saw this scene, he raised his whip and lashed it at Zhuori Feng and Lin Qingxue. Don't even think of harming my family. Yun Ruoyan shouted as she sent Scarlet Eye flying towards the whip. Scarlet Eye blocked the majority of the whip, but a small portion still managed to strike Zhuori Feng and Lin Qingxue. At this moment, a shield suddenly appeared in front of Zhuori Feng. That pitch-black shield blocked the remaining whip shadows. Then, without any hesitation, Zhuori Feng picked up Lin Qingxue and ran off into the distance. They actually got away. Thunderbolt's eyes widened in shock as he looked in the direction that Zhuori Feng and Lin Qingxue had escaped. As long as he could remember, he had never seen anyone escape from his brother's clutches. At the same time, he was worried for Yun Ruoyan. She would soon have to bear the full brunt of Thunderbolt Batian's wrath. Her spiritual sea, which had just healed not long ago, had ruptured again. With only a level 9 cultivation, he was actually able to withstand 2 of my full power whips. This is really beyond my expectations. Thunderbolt Batian muttered to himself. After all, he was a second-level sword saint, and he had thought that he would be able to kill Yun Ruoyan with a single whip. Who would have thought that she would still be alive after 2 whips? That sword must have saved her. Thunderbolt Batian looked at the scarlet eye in Yun Ruoyan's hands. Even though Yun Ruoyan knew that she was powerless to resist, she still used the last of her strength to prop herself up. She leaned against the mountain wall, her eyes staring unblinkingly at Thunderbolt Batian. Thunderbolt Batian was also staring at this incredibly petite, yet incredibly stubborn woman. When their gazes met, he suddenly saw 2 red flashes in Yun Ruoyan's eyes. Then, he saw something strange happen to Yun Ruoyan's body. Tiny, scale-like substances began to emerge from the wounds on her forehead and face, covering her wounds like a protective membrane. What kind of technique is this? Thunderbolt Batian was puzzled. At the same time, he raised the whip in his hand once more. To him, the best way to deal with things that he couldn't control was to destroy them. Brother, wouldn't it be a pity to kill her just like that? Thunderbolt Batian asked from behind Thunderbolt Batian. A person who can't be controlled is no better than a dead person, Thunderbolt Batian replied coldly as he lashed out with his whip. Yun Ruoyan could clearly see the whip coming at her with a murderous aura, but strangely, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Instead, she felt as if something was happening to her body, and this change had completely wiped out her fear of the world. Just as the whip was about to hit Yun Ruoyan, a black figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stood in front of Yun Ruoyan, blocking the fatal blow for her. How are you? Can you still stand up? The Count of Feng asked Yun Ruoyan, his entire body wrapped in a black robe. Yun Ruoyan, however, remained in a daze, not responding at all. Thunderbolt Count frowned. He turned around to pick Yun Ruoyan up, but he suddenly felt a sharp attack coming from behind. Thunderbolt Count turned around and waved his sleeves, dispersing the attack. Without another word, a yellow sword aura appeared beneath Thunderbolt Count's feet, and he leapt into the air to leave. Who are you? How dare you interfere in the affairs of the Thunderbolt family? Another figure suddenly appeared on a golden sword aura and blocked Thunderbolt Count's path. Father! Thunderbolt Batian and Thunderbolt Batian called out at the same time. Thunderbolt Batian had sent a message to Thunderbolt Flame when he'd brought his men here. This vein was the Thunderbolt family's largest, and Thunderbolt Flame viewed it with great importance. Their cultivations were about the same, and their moves were also extremely powerful. For a moment, the energy released from their battle lit up half the sky as if it were daytime. While the two of them were engaged in battle, Shui Feng and Lin Qingxue took the opportunity to rush to where Yun Ruoyan was lying. Without a word, Shui Feng carried Yun Ruoyan on his back and ran, Lin Qingxue following closely behind. Flying on a sword would be faster, but they were too obvious a target, so running on foot was the best option. As expected, they ran for more than half a kilometer without being discovered. Not daring to relax, the two of them continued to run. Thunderbolt Flame and Thunderbolt Count fought from the sky to the ground, and the battle grew more and more intense. Thunderbolt Flame was a metal-attuned cultivator, known for his powerful attacks. Even so, Thunderbolt Count wasn't at a disadvantage, but it was still impossible for him to defeat his opponent. Where's that girl? Thunderbolt Flame suddenly realized that Yun Ruoyan, who had been lying quietly on the ground, had disappeared without a trace. He stopped fighting and turned to Thunderbolt Count. I don't know. Perhaps she woke up on her own and escaped, Thunderbolt Count replied in a low voice. As long as Yun Ruoyan didn't fall into Thunderbolt Flame's hands, he would have achieved his goal. Thunderflame snorted coldly and was about to search for it, but Count of Wind stood in front of him to stop him. Thunderflame couldn't get away for a while. What belongs to the Thunderbolt family can't fall into the hands of others. You forced my hand. Thunderflame raised the golden blade in his hand and poured all of his spiritual energy into it. The blade shone brightly, even more dazzling than the sun in the day. Everything within a radius of 4 to 5 kilometers was enveloped by this golden light, even Shui Feng and Lin Qingxue. Then, a bolt of lightning struck Thunderflame's golden blade. The golden blade was covered in countless electric tongues as it slashed towards Feng. Both Thunderbolt Flame's speed was so fast that he turned into a streak of light and fled. Thunderflame did not give chase. Instead, he wielded his golden saber in mid-air and slashed it down in different directions within a 2-mile radius. Every time he slashed down with his saber, countless lightning bolts would appear in the sky and strike the ground. Shui Feng and Lin Qingxue were surrounded by lightning bolts all around them, splitting the earth and rocks in their wake. Chased by the lightning, the two of them ran as fast as they could. Even when there was a steep slope in front of them, they couldn't avoid it in time. Then, the two of them rolled down the slope with Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan turned to Shui Feng. Not only are the three of you my saviors, but you're also my trustworthy sisters. As a result, Yun Ruoyan told Auntie Hong and the others that she, Lin Qingxue, and Shui Feng, were all from a lowly continent. You're all servants of the Thunder family. Little Qing asked in surprise. That's only because the Thunder family has always been willing. We didn't sell ourselves to them, Lin Qingxue protested. Well said. Hoodlum slammed the table. Why should we be their slaves just because we can't beat them? We must resist to the end. This time, it was Yun Ruoyan and the others who stared at Hoodlum in shock. Hoodlum and the others were natives of this continent, and no matter how low their statuses were, they were still higher than slaves from a lowly continent. They truly hadn't expected Hoodlum to say such a thing. You don't have to be surprised, Hoodlum replied. The Thunder family's cruelty isn't limited to just you. They're also merciless to the smaller families that refuse to submit to their rule. His expression was one of obvious anger and hatred. Sister Hoodlum, Yunruoyan said, from your tone, it seems like you have a grudge with the Thunder family. Not just a grudge, Auntie Hong, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. That's the grudge of killing their parents and exterminating their entire clan. Chapter 363. Hearing Auntie Hong say this, Yunruoyan and the others all looked at her. Me, Hoodlum, Little Qing, and all the other girls in the troop weren't born as lowly commoners of the Dark Abyss continent. We were nobles with our own families, Auntie Hong continued. Her eyes flashed slightly, but her expression didn't change in the slightest. This kind of strict emotional management was something that could only be achieved after a long period of training. But our families were destroyed by the Thunderbolt family, Hoodlum continued angrily, and we became lowly commoners as a result. Through Auntie Hong and Hoodlum's narration, Yunruoyan learned that they originally had their own family. But, as the Thunderbolt family expanded, they implemented a tyrannical policy of suppression. Any family that opposed them or didn't want to submit to them were brutally suppressed. All adult family members were killed, the boys were enslaved, and the girls were sold as prostitutes. The girls in the troop were all the young ladies who opposed the Thunderbolt family. We were sold to different places and became prostitutes, Little Qing said slowly. Xiaoqing's eyes drooped as she slowly said, it was all thanks to Auntie Hong and Hoodlum that we sisters were able to escape from that hell. Now, we even have a place to stay. Yunruoyan looked at Auntie Hong, who was sitting quietly. She had completely restrained her emotions, and her expression was as calm as ever. Yunruoyan knew that Auntie Hong was just a title she used to refer to her. She looked to be in her early 20s, not much older than Little Qing, but she gave off the feeling that she had experienced many vicissitudes of life and maturity. Her facial features were actually delicate and pretty, but her red clothes and heavy makeup hid her original temperament, giving others a false impression of seduction. Miss and I are master and servant. Hoodlum glanced at Auntie Hong and said, because the two of us are quite strong, we were able to escape while we were being sold. After Hoodlum and Auntie Hong escaped, they roamed the Dark Abyss continent with some of the family's treasures that they had secretly hidden. In the process, they saved Little Qing and the 20 or so girls in the troop. Auntie Hong had set up a troop in order to make it easier to move around and to fool others. The Thunderbolt family really is evil, Lin Qingxue said angrily. Lin Qingxue said angrily, I thought that they only targeted us from the so-called lowly continents. I didn't think that even the natives of the Dark Abyss continent couldn't escape their persecution. The Thunderbolt clan only cares about power and benefits. Hoodlum said, as long as one offends them in these two areas, no matter who it is, they will suffer a calamity. It's not just the Thunder clan. Little Qing sneered, the 7 clans fight openly and covertly, snatching and snatching. Which one of them is easy to deal with? The troop was currently resting in a small town between Thunder City and Wind City. This town was still part of Thunder City, and the troop's next destination was Wind City. Yunruoyan had to go to Thunder City to find Liemo, so she bade farewell to Auntie Hong and prepared to leave in 2 days' time. The next day, Yunruoyan and Hoodlum went out shopping as usual. There, they saw the guards of the city posting portraits of escaped slaves on the walls, and the portrait was of Yunruoyan. The two of them immediately returned to the inn. Since the situation in Thunder City was still tense, it wasn't wise for them to risk their lives. As a result, Yunruoyan's plan to return to Thunder City was temporarily put on hold. In the city lord's manor, Liemo had locked himself up in the woodshed for several days. Just a few nights ago, the brocade-robed man had brought him a piece of shocking news. Yunruoyan had been killed by Thunderflame using a lightning-attracting technique, and not even her bones had been left. Liemo had spat out a mouthful of blood, but he quickly realized that Yunruoyan couldn't be dead. He could still sense the aura of the azure sword, even if it was very weak. Yun Ruoyan had kept the azure sword in her pocket dimension. If Yun Ruoyan were to die, then the bracelet would become an ownerless object and seal itself. Li Mo wouldn't be able to sense the aura of anything within it until someone opened it again. However, Li Mo could still sense the aura of the azure sword, so he was certain that Yun Ruoyan was still alive. It was just that she was too far away from him. These past few days, Li Mo had locked himself up in the woodshed, using his mental energy to search for the azure sword's location. Once he found the sword, he also found Yun Ruoyan. Only when Yun Ruoyan's portrait was plastered all over the city did the Count of Feng and the brocade-robed man realize that Yun Ruoyan wasn't dead. That night, the brocade-robed man once again snuck into the city lord's manor to inform Li Mo of the news, but was told by Lin Qingchen that Li Mo was in seclusion. The brocade-robed man couldn't help but sigh when he recalled how Li Mo had spat out blood that day. To think that this girl would be so important to Li Mo. When he returned, he proposed to the head of the Feng family the idea of helping Li Mo find Yun Ruoyan, and the head of the Feng family agreed. After a few days and nights of searching with his mental energy, Li Mo finally confirmed the location of the azure light sword. When he awoke from his meditative state, he immediately left the manor alone and began searching in the direction he had been searching. In the middle of the night, Li Mo's figure appeared in the small town where Yun Ruoyan and the others were staying. At the moment, Yun Ruoyan was cultivating in her room. With the help of a sagely spirit crystal, Yun Ruoyan didn't need to deliberately condense her spiritual energy. As long as she didn't expend a large amount of it, her spiritual vortex would always be filled with spiritual energy. However, a portion of this spiritual energy would automatically turn black every day, and Yun Ruoyan had spent the last few days trying to figure out the difference between this black spiritual energy and the white spiritual energy. Just as Yun Ruoyan was concentrating on her spiritual vortex, she suddenly heard a chirping sound. Mistress, mistress, I can sense Li Mo's aura. Yun Ruoyan opened her eyes immediately. She, too, had sensed Li Mo's aura not far from her. Yun Ruoyan got off the bed, opened the door, and a red sword aura appeared beneath her feet. The sword aura carried Yun Ruoyan into the air, hovering in midair. Li Mo felt the aura getting closer and closer. He looked around and saw a red sword aura in the distance. That aura was so familiar. Yen, Li Mo called out Yun Ruoyan's name in a hoarse voice. Yun Ruoyan also saw the green sword aura beneath Li Mo's feet. At the same time, she felt the dragon-engraved sword in her bracelet begin to tremble violently, as if it had sensed its master's arrival. Yun Ruoyan opened the pocket dimension in her silver bracelet, and the sword turned into a streak of green light as it sped toward Li Mo. Li Mo reached out and caught the sword in his hand, and a low dragon's roar emanated from the sword. Thank you for bringing me to Yen, Li Mo said softly to the sword, then stored it back into his body. Li Mo, Yun Ruoyan's tears began to well up in her eyes. Li Mo's figure was rushing toward her, and before her tears could fall, she was enveloped in a warm embrace. A stream of tears fell from Yun Ruoyan's eyes onto Li Mo's chest, drenching the front of his robe. Yen, 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 Li Mo called out Yun Ruoyan's name hoarsely, over and over again, as if afraid that the person in his arms wasn't real. Yun Ruoyan struggled slightly as she raised her head to look into Li Mo's eyes. His ink-black eyes were filled with so much emotion, as if they were two deep pools that drew Yun Ruoyan in. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help reaching out to caress Li Mo's chiseled face. His face was slightly pale, and his lips were red. Li Mo, I missed you so much. Yun Ruoyan murmured softly. As she spoke, she tiptoed and kissed Li Mo on the lips. Chapter 364. Yun Ruoyan's kiss was like a spark that ignited Li Mo's yearning for her. Li Mo reached out and grabbed Yun Ruoyan's waist, lifting her up and pressing her against his body, as if trying to fuse her into his own. Yun Ruoyan's yearning for Liemo was no less than his own. Driven by the mutual desire between them, the dual cultivation technique began to take effect. White spiritual energy had already seeped out of Limeau's spiritual vortex through his meridians, enveloping the two of them. Liemo, we can't stay here. Limeau's kiss became more and more intense, causing Yun Ruoyan to feel a little dizzy. Even so, she managed to maintain some semblance of consciousness. I'm not familiar with this area. Yen, do you know where the safest place is? Liemo asked hoarsely. If they returned to the relay station, they would surely be alerted. There's a forest to the west. Before Yun Ruoyan could finish her sentence, Liemo picked her up and sped toward the western mountains. This was the place where Yun Ruoyan's azure light sword had landed when she first arrived at the dark abyss. In the dark, quiet forest, the cries of birds and beasts could be heard from time to time. On a flat patch of grass, two bodies were hugging each other tightly. Their bodies were enveloped in white spiritual energy, as if they were cocoons that were protecting them. After a moment of extreme pleasure, Yun Ruoyan once again sank into the familiar sensation of being enveloped by warm seawater, comfortable and peaceful. After an indeterminate amount of time, Yun Ruoyan suddenly felt the seawater around her slowly grow hotter and hotter. It's hot, Liemo, it's hot. Yun Ruoyan murmured in pain. Yen, what's wrong? Liemo had also noticed Yun Ruoyan's abnormality. Her initially serene expression had become somewhat pained, and her body was burning hotter and hotter. A thin layer of sweat covered her entire body, as if she were being roasted by fire. And at this moment, a strange scene happened. Liemo could see a black mist seeping out of Yun Ruoyan's body, slowly swallowing up the white mist that Limeau's body was emitting. The two of them were slowly enveloped by the black mist. Yen. Liemo called out her name, and she finally opened her eyes. They were a pair of scarlet-red eyes, and Limeau's expression was one of disbelief. When Yun Ruoyan woke up, the sky was just beginning to brighten. As soon as she opened her eyes, she smelled the rich aroma of meat. As soon as she sat up, she saw Liemo standing by the fire, roasting a pheasant over the fire. You're awake. Liemo turned and smiled at her. Yes. Yun Ruoyan smiled and walked over to Limeau's side. Liemo tore off a piece of the roasted pheasant and handed it to Yun Ruoyan, who began eating it carefully. The taste was excellent, but the hunger was gone, and there was no more of the thrill of swallowing one's tongue. I'm full. After finishing a small piece, Liemo offered it back to her, but she waved it away. Yen. Liemo placed the unfinished roasted meat on the ground and looked at Yun Ruoyan. Did you know what happened while we were dual cultivating last night? Yun Ruoyan looked back at Liemo. She first nodded, then shook her head. I could sense that something was amiss, but I didn't know what. As a result, Liemo recounted everything that had transpired the night before. After I stopped cultivating, the black mist retreated back into your body, Liemo continued. I probed your spiritual vortex further and discovered that there was a large amount of black spiritual energy within it. Do you know where it came from? Limeau's tone and expression were both worried. I was just about to tell you about it, Yun Ruoyan replied. Yun Ruoyan began to explain to Liemo how she had followed the caged carts from Thunderbolt City to Liemo. She described her battle with the long-faced man, as well as how the demonic eye had left her with the demonic dragon's power in order to protect her, and how she had begun to cultivate the demonic dragon technique with that power. She hoped that Liemo would be able to find some clues from this. After my battle with the long-faced man, I broke through to 9th rank, Yun Ruoyan began. Then, at the Beastkin's invitation, I went with them to the Spirit Crystal Mine, where I fought with Thunderbolt Badian. Liemo frowned. How could you have been his match? Liemo was quite angry at Yun Ruoyan's risky behavior. One was a 9th-rank blade master, while the other was a 2nd-rank peak blade master. They were on completely different levels. To Yunruoyan, Thunderbolt Batian was like an adult to a child, and she had no way of resisting him. Of course I wasn't his match, Yunruoyan replied. I also thought that I was going to die, but just as I was on the verge of death, I felt the incantations of the art of the divine dragon in my body begin to circulate on their own. When I didn't do anything, it started to heal the injuries I suffered. From the inside to the outside, from the spirit ocean to the external injuries on my body, everything was healing itself. I felt as if my body and consciousness had been separated. Yunruoyan frowned, her expression perplexed. During this process, she didn't feel any pain or fear, as if she had been separated from the rest of the world. While I was healing, a black-clothed man rushed over and stopped Thunderbolt Batian's assassin. After that, the two of them fought, and Zhuai Feng carried me away. We were buried in the sand until the performing arts team came to rescue us. Yunruoyan lowered her eyes. Although I was aware of what was happening in the outside world, I acted as if it had nothing to do with me. By the time my body was almost completely healed, my consciousness had fallen into an illusion. What illusion? By then, Liemo had already walked up to Yunruoyan's side. Chapter 365. Lin Qingchen, Qin Feng, and Lin Tianming were all at the City Lord's manor. If Liemo were to disappear, the three of them would surely be implicated, so Liemo had to return as soon as possible. Liemo, there are some people I'd like you to meet, Yunruoyan said. Liemo saw that her tone and expression were quite serious, and he guessed that it must be someone very important. He followed Yunruoyan to the inn, where he met Auntie Hong and the others. Auntie Hong, Hoodlum, Sister Qingqing, Yunruoyan introduced Liemo to the three of them. This is my husband, Liemo. When Yunruoyan called him husband, both Little Qing and Hoodlum were shocked. Even Auntie Hong, who usually didn't show her emotions, looked at Liemo a few times. Liemo, they're my benefactors, and they've saved my life twice, Yunruoyan continued. In addition, they have a grudge against the Thunderbolt family. They want revenge, but they don't have the means to do so. I heard from you that you and the Feng family have come to an agreement to deal with the Thunderbolt family together, which means that the Feng and Thunderbolt families are truly irreconcilable enemies. If that's the case, could you recommend the troop to the Feng family? As Auntie Hong heard Yunruoyan's words, her calm eyes flashed once more. The troop will definitely do whatever it takes to deal with the Thunderbolt family, Auntie Hong replied. Although we don't have an advantage in terms of cultivation, we've spent many years with the various families in the 7 cities, and we've gained some understanding of them. If the Feng family is willing to accept us, we'll surely be of great use to them. Little Qing and Hoodlum were also very excited. They had thought that they would never have a chance to exact revenge in their lifetime, but the opportunity presented itself so quickly. All right, I'll recommend you to the Feng family, Liemo agreed. You two stay here for now and wait for news from the Feng family. After Yunruoyan sent Liemo off, Liemo began to tell Yunruoyan about Lin Tianming. Yunruoyan was naturally very excited, and she couldn't wait to bring Lin Qingxue and Liemo to pay a visit to her long-lost uncle. I didn't mention it until now precisely because I didn't want you to worry about me. Liemo followed Yunruoyan's lead and addressed Lin Tianming as her uncle. As long as you bring us along, we'll be careful. Yunruoyan tried to convince Liemo, no. Let's not even talk about how heavily guarded the City Lord's manor is. Right now, the entire Thunderbolt City is looking for you. You're not allowed to do something as dangerous as saving Zhuai Feng and Lin Qingxue on your own. It would be best if we can get Uncle out of the City Lord's mansion. Liemo replied, the City Lord's manor isn't suitable for him to recuperate. It'd be best if we could think of a way to get him out. Just as the two of them were pondering this question, Chochio's voice appeared in Yunruoyan's mind. Isn't that easy? Cho-cho, do you have a plan? Yun Ruoyan asked. Of course, it's a piece of cake, Cho-cho said confidently. On the night that Liemo returned, he met with the brocade-robed man and told him about the troop. Coincidentally, the brocade-robed man had also come to talk to Liemo about the troop. He had discovered this troop while investigating Yun Ruoyan's whereabouts, and suspected that Yun Ruoyan was in their hands. Just as he was about to inform Liemo of his suspicions, Liemo spoke up first. So it's an acquaintance. No wonder. The brocade-robed man exclaimed. The Feng family will accept any force that wishes to deal with the Thunderbolt family, but I'll have to consult with the head of the family first. After the brocade-robed man left, Liemo began to meditate. The black spiritual energy in Yun Ruoyan's body was extremely domineering, and during their dual cultivation, there had been a brief conflict between the two spiritual energies, causing Liemo to suffer some damage. However, this conflict was only temporary, and the impact wasn't too great. Liemo would be able to recover after a short period of rest. The next day, Liemo passed the brocade-robed man's ointment to Lin Qingqian. She needed this ointment for Mo's recovery. That day, Mo had been severely injured, and Liemo had thought that he wouldn't survive. Fortunately, Lin Qingqian had been there, and she had managed to save Mo's life. The ointment was extremely effective, and Mo recovered very quickly. After 2 or 3 days, he was able to fly around the house for a short period of time, and after a few more days, he was able to fly normally again. Liemo wanted Mo to deliver a letter to Yun Ruoyan, but it had been so frightened by the cloud-swallowing beast that it didn't dare to fly out of the house. Only after Pai Batian had left the manor with the cloud-swallowing beast did Mo finally fly out of the city to deliver a letter to Yun Ruoyan. This letter was written by Lin Tianming. Perhaps because her hand was too weak to hold the pen, her handwriting was very crooked, and the content was simple. However, the love and concern of an elder for a descendant was clearly felt by both Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingxue. The image of a pale, thin, but benevolent elder seemed to appear on the black and white paper. Sister Ruoyan, we have to save uncle. Lin Qingxue urged. Don't worry. Yun Ruoyan patted Lin Qingxue's hand. I'll be able to save him very soon. Yun Ruoyan's reply to Liemo listed a few ingredients for the pill. On the night that Liemo received Yun Ruoyan's reply, the brocade-robed man once again visited Liemo. You've come at the right time. I have something that I need your help with, Liemo replied. There's no need to be so polite, brotherly. You and I are now on the same boat, the brocade-robed man replied. My name is Feng Yicheng. You can call me by my name in the future. All right, brother Feng. Liemo handed Yun Ruoyan's list of ingredients to Feng Yicheng. See if you can get your hands on some of these ingredients. Feng Yicheng read through the notes, then folded them neatly and placed them in his sleeve. Only then did he say to Liemo, although these ingredients are rare, the Feng family should be able to procure them. Brotherly, don't worry. That's good. Liemo relaxed a little. Otherwise, no matter how difficult it would be, he would get his hands on these ingredients for Yun Ruoyan. Brotherly, I'm here because of the troop you mentioned last time, Feng Yicheng began. The head of the family has already agreed to accept the troop for his own use, and he has important plans for them. That's why he's sending me there to train them. I'll be leaving tomorrow, so I'd like you to inform them in advance, lest I offend them. Liemo wrote a letter and had Mo deliver it to him, briefly explaining the Feng family and Feng Yicheng's situation. On the third day, Feng Yicheng arrived at the post house and met with Yun Ruoyan and the troop's girls. Feng Yicheng handed the herbs to Yun Ruoyan, and she immediately began to concoct the pill. Whether or not she could save Lin Tianming from the Thunderbolt family depended on whether or not she could successfully concoct the pill. Feng Yicheng was handsome, and he was quite charming and amiable. As a result, the troop's girls were quite fond of him. He had come on the orders of the head of the Feng family to train them so that they could become an intelligence network that could travel between the various families. Soon, Feng Yicheng discovered that the troop's girls were all excellent spies, and they didn't require any special training at all. Someone must have deliberately trained them. Only later did he learn that it was Auntie Hong who had trained them. Miss Hong. Feng Yicheng was standing in a hallway, watching the girls train below. Auntie Hong walked up to him, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully to her. After Feng Yicheng gained some understanding of Auntie Hong, he began to admire her from the bottom of his heart. Young Master Feng, there's no need to be so polite. Auntie Hong's gaze also landed on the girls below. I heard from Ruoyan that you'll be directly in charge of our troop in the future. I wouldn't dare be in charge, but I'm here on behalf of the head of the family to discuss your daily operations. As for other matters, neither the Feng family nor I will interfere too much, Feng Yicheng replied. He was dressed in a brocade robe, and his face was as smooth as jade. He looked like a scion of a wealthy family, but his tone was mature and thoughtful. It was a stark contrast to his appearance, and this made Auntie Hong feel a little strange. There's something I'm curious about, but I'm not sure if I should say it. Please speak, Miss Hong, Feng Yicheng said. Chapter 366. After a full day and night of condensation, the pill in the cauldron finally took shape. It was a purplish-red pill that emitted a faint, bitter odor. Mistress, just put in the last ingredient, Qiu instructed Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan picked up a stalk of black spiritual herb and ignited a flame in her hand. The stalk slowly turned into powder in her hand. Yun Ruoyan sprinkled the powder onto the purplish-red pill in the cauldron, and the pill immediately changed color, turning from purplish-red to a deep purple. The faint, bitter odor also disappeared. Yun Ruoyan extended her hand toward the cauldron, and the dark purple, odorless pill floated out of the cauldron and into her palm. Mistress, it's a success! Qiu exclaimed excitedly. This is a third-grade pill, a death-like pill. A death-like pill. Yun Ruoyan looked at the pill in her hand, her expression one of excitement. I've finally succeeded. Over the course of a day and a night, Yun Ruoyan had finally succeeded in condensing the pill 3 times, and she now possessed the cultivation of a third-rank pill master. Mistress, if you feed this pill to someone, they'll enter a state of suspended animation, Qiu explained. Qiu explained, within 3 days, the person who consumes this medicine will experience a series of symptoms similar to that of a dead person. No one will be able to tell anything. After 3 days, the state of suspended animation will slowly disappear from the person's body, and they'll slowly come back to life. This entire process will take 6 days. The Li father and son are sly. Surely they won't find out. Yun Ruoyan was still a little worried. As long as it concerned her family, Yun Ruoyan would always be so cautious that she would be a little worried. Don't worry, mistress, Qiu added. Once the pill takes effect, it'll accelerate the rate at which the person's body festers. Even a normal physician wouldn't dare approach, let alone the so-called nobles of the Li family. There's no way they'll be discovered. This was a serious matter, and Yun Ruoyan was worried that Immortal would encounter a cloud-devouring beast again, so she handed the death-like pill to Feng Yicheng. After receiving the pill, Li Mo fed it to Lin Tianming, then had Lin Qingchen summon the bearded steward. As soon as the steward arrived, Lin Tianming began to spasm and sweat profusely. Soon after, he began foaming at the mouth in front of the steward, his eyes rolled back, and he stopped breathing. Since Thunderbolt Badian wasn't in the city lord's mansion, Steward Hu hurriedly went to report this situation to Thunderflame. Lin Tianming was captured by Thunderflame in the past. However, after Long Yin's capture, he had lost his value and was tossed into Lin Tianming's prison like a piece of trash. If not for Li Mo's sudden reminder, he would have forgotten about Long Yin's existence. Dead? Thunderflame opened the red invitation card in his hand and asked without raising his head, "Are you sure?" "He's really out of breath." Trembling with fear, the mustached steward said, "He suddenly fell ill right in front of me." Before I could react, he had already breathed his last. "If he's dead, then he's dead," Thunderflame said nonchalantly. "Do whatever you want with him." "Yes, Your Highness." The mustached man turned to leave. The mustached steward usually worked for Thunderflame, so he was a little afraid of Thunderflame. As for the patriarch of the city lord's manor, he was even more afraid of him. "Wait." Thunderflame's voice rang out from behind the mustached man. He had only exchanged a few words with Thunderflame, but his back was already drenched in sweat. "Patriarch, is there anything else?" "I'll see to it right away," the mustached man said, suppressing his fear. "How's that Liam-o?" Thunderflame asked. "He's already out of the room, and there's nothing out of the ordinary about him." "Nothing out of the ordinary," Thunderflame muttered to himself. Thunderflame muttered to himself, "She must know that Yun Ruoyan isn't dead, so where is she hiding? How am I supposed to find her?" The man with the mustache seemed to have done this on purpose. He didn't immediately dispose of Lin Tianming's body. Lin Tianming's body was left in the woodshed for 2 days. During these 2 days, Lin Tianming's body began to rot, and the stench of decay spread from the woodshed to the courtyard. Only then did the mustached man send someone to carry Lin Tianming away. According to usual practice, the corpse would be thrown into a mass grave to be fed to the dogs. The men were all wearing thick clothes, masks, and gloves. "Be quick, Mary!" The mustached man commanded from outside the door, muttering, "Oh my, look at this smell. If it were summer, there'd be maggots. It's only been a few days. It can't be some sort of plague, can it?" Lin Qingchen stood to the side and looked at the ring on the middle finger of the mustached man's hand that was covering his mouth and nose. She frowned subconsciously. The spatial ring that Lin Zainan had given her had been taken away by a junior steward, and before Lin Qingchen could retrieve it, it had already fallen into the hands of the mustached man. "This courtyard will be sealed for a month," the mustached man announced. "In order to prevent the spread of a plague, the people living in this woodshed will not be allowed out for a month." The mustached man turned to leave, feeling rather pleased with himself. If it really was some sort of plague, it would be best if those people died from it, lest his master, Thunderbolt, had to protect them all the time. Thunderbolt and Thunderbolt had suddenly disappeared, and the warriors in the manor were all saying that they were dissatisfied with Thunderbolt's decision to protect Liam-o and the other rats from the lower-tier continents. As a result, Thunderbolt's already low standing in the hearts of the warriors grew even lower. "What are you looking at? Be careful, or I'll dig your eyes out." The man with the mustache noticed Lin Qingchen's gaze on him. His eyes widened and his beard twitched as he scolded her. Lin Qingchen lowered her head, silently contemplating how she could get the ring back from him. Lin Tianming was pushed out of the Thunderbolt Manor by a few servants in a carriage, all the way to the mass grave, where a number of wild dogs were waiting to devour human corpses. The stench of corpses on Lin Tianming's body drifted far away, attracting a pack of wild dogs and wolves to come over. The servants hurriedly carried Lin Tianming off the carriage and tossed him on the ground, then ran out of the mass grave, only to be chased by the wild dogs and wolves. There were a few cries of agony as a streak of sword light suddenly appeared, stabbing 4 or 5 wild beasts to death in an instant, and the rest scattered in disarray. Feng Yicheng walked out from behind a tombstone and walked up to Lin Tianming's side. The stench caused him to involuntarily cover his mouth and nose. He looked at the ash-gray Lin Tianming on the ground. Lin Tianming was so emaciated that he almost didn't look human, and now he looked more like a corpse that had been dead for a very long time. Feng Yicheng couldn't help but wonder, could this person really come back to life? Despite his suspicions, he still took out a gray cloth and wrapped Lin Tianming under his armpit. Sword light appeared beneath his feet as he sped toward the small town where the troop was located. Lin Tianming had also thought that he was dead, so much so that when he opened his eyes and saw two beautiful girls smiling at him, he thought that they were maidens from the netherworld. But how could maidens from the netherworld be so pretty? Uncle. Uncle. Only when Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen called out to him did he realize that he hadn't died. Not only had he not died, he had even been saved. Your Ruoyan, your Qingchen. In his excitement, Lin Tianming's eyes, which had long since dried up, actually began to tear up. Many years of imprisonment and illness had numbed him. Although he had always clung to a slim hope of survival, he had long since given up all hope. Unexpectedly, in the midst of his despair, the heavens had given him another chance. After all, the heavens still have eyes, Lin Tianming muttered hoarsely as his tears flowed down his cheeks. After Lin Tianming woke up, he only drank some of the medicine that Yun Ruoyan had prepared in advance before falling back into a deep slumber. It's all right, uncle. His body's just too weak, and he'll slowly recover. Yun Ruoyan comforted Lin Qingxue. Feng Yicheng had been watching from the side the entire time. In fact, he had been observing Lin Tianming ever since he had brought him back. He had personally seen Lin Tianming slowly recover from the dead, and then miraculously come back to life. His gaze toward Yun Ruoyan was filled with admiration. He hadn't expected a teenage girl to be able to concoct such a miraculous pill, and he was determined to recommend Yun Ruoyan to the head of the family. He had a feeling that, compared to Liemo, Yun Ruoyan would be just as useful. After a few days of rest, Lin Tianming's body gradually recovered. One day, Lin Tianming summoned Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen to his side. The two of them knew that Lin Tianming had something to say to them, and what he wanted to say was exactly what they wanted to ask. Ruoyan, I heard from Liemo a few days ago that you've been investigating the whereabouts of your parents. Now, I'm going to tell you everything I know. Lin Tianming then turned to Lin Qingxue. And Qingxue, regarding your father, Tianhai, I'd like to give you an explanation as well. Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingxue looked at Lin Tianming and nodded silently, but the nervousness and anticipation in their eyes were intense. Tianhai, Long Yin, and Yun Lan, the four of us were very good friends. Lin Tianming slowly recounted the past that had been buried deep in his heart for a very long time. As Lin Tianming recounted the events that had transpired in the past, Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen's eyes began to surface one scene after another. Long Yin's public identity was that of a scion from a remote, ordinary family. Because of his exceptional talent for cultivation, he had been sent to the capital in search of an opportunity to study at Kongming Academy. In the process, Long Yin had met Lin Tianming, Lin Tianhai, and Yun Lan, becoming good friends with the three of them and living with the Yun family. Later, he had met Lin Yuemei and fallen in love with her at first sight. Their relationship had taken place under the witness of the Lin brothers and Yun Lan. Although Long Yin had come from a small, unknown family, he had been a perfect match for Lin Yuemei. At first, Lin Zainan had been very opposed to the idea, but under the persuasion of his siblings, he had gradually relented. Just as everyone thought that the two of them would become a couple, Long Yin suddenly disappeared. Chapter 367. Yun Ruoyan had learned of what happened next from Qin Jianmei. Yun Lan, who had always been in love with Lin Yuemei, took the opportunity to marry her and give birth to Yun Maxiao. A few years later, however, Long Yin suddenly reappeared and took Lin Yuemei away. The two of them disappeared for a few months, and during that time, Lin Yuemei became pregnant with Yun Ruoyan. Long Yin's sudden appearance broke the silence. Lin Tianming began. He found us and confessed his true identity. He was the heir of the legendary demonic dragon bloodline, and his disappearance was because he had been summoned by the demonic dragon's soul to revive them. Reviving the demonic dragon clan wasn't an easy task, and it was highly likely that he would have to pay with his life. Long Yin didn't feel that he had such a mission, so he found an opportunity to escape. The Lin brothers knew that their sister was deeply in love with Long Yin. Even after marrying Yunlan, she hadn't been truly happy. Long Yin's two brothers, who doted on his sister dearly, arranged for the two of them to meet. After learning of Long Yin's difficulties, Lin Yuemei forgave him, and the two of them decided to elope. Naturally, the Lin brothers didn't approve of their decision, but Lin Yuemei threatened to kill herself, and the two of them relented. Long Yin said that the demonic dragon clan wouldn't let him go, so they needed to find a safe place to hide. The Yun family wouldn't let the matter rest either, so the group decided to find a place where Long Yin and Lin Yuemei could live in seclusion. Lin Tianhai suddenly thought of the alternate dimension at Kongming Academy. At that time, the Lin brothers had already entered Kongming Academy to cultivate, and they had learned how to activate the formation that led to the alternate dimension. As a result, the group sneaked up to Kongming Peak and activated the formation. With Lin Tianming and Lin Tianhai's cultivation, they could only teleport the two of them to an unknown alternate dimension. We thought that would be the end, but we didn't expect that someone would come looking for us so quickly, Lin Tianming began. Did the demon dragon clan find you? Yun Ruoyan asked. No. Lin Tianming shook his head. It wasn't the demonic dragon clan that came looking for us, but the silver dragon clan's lackey, Thunderflame, the current head of the Thunderflame family. Yun Ruoyan wasn't unfamiliar with Thunderflame. She'd seen him in her dreams, and she'd seen him in real life. Thunderbolt Batian and Thunderbolt Flame looked so much alike that Yun Ruoyan would always mistake them for each other. Thunderflame couldn't find Long Yin, so he used force to threaten me and Tianhai. We swore that we wouldn't reveal Long Yin and Yumei's whereabouts, so we were brought here, Lin Tianming continued. My father was also brought here. Lin Qingshue's eyes lit up as she hurriedly asked, Uncle, where is my father now? Liemo agreed to meet with him, and one night, Liemo followed Feng Yicheng out of the city lord's manor. In a restaurant, Liemo met with the head of the Feng family, Feng Yanyang. Young Master Li, please have a seat. Feng Yanyang gestured for Liemo to sit down. In front of him was a fragrant teapot and two exquisite teacups. Feng Yanyang wasn't in a hurry to speak with Liemo. Instead, he poured a cup of tea for himself and Liemo, then invited Liemo to taste it. The people of the Heiyuan continent valued martial prowess, and they would often arrange for slaves to spar with each other during banquets. As a result, it was rare to see someone sit down and enjoy a cup of tea. Good tea. Liemo praised, then put down the empty cup in his hand. He looked at the serene middle-aged man in front of him. You're in a good mood, Patriarch Feng. But surely you didn't invite me here just to taste tea. I do have something to tell you. Feng Yanyang said with a smile, the Seven Cities martial tournament will be held soon. If I'm not wrong, the Thunder Clan will send you. Seven Cities martial arts competition. Liemo frowned slightly. This was the first time he had heard of this. The Thunderbolt family hadn't heard of this before. How can Patriarch Feng be so sure that the Thunderbolt clan will send me out? As Feng Yanyang filled Liemo's teacup, he continued, this tournament is extremely important to our seven families. Last time, Pai Batian of the Pai family fought against Fengbo of the Feng family, and Pai Batian lost. Liemo glanced at the Count of Feng, who was standing by Feng Yanyang's side. Ever since Liemo had entered the room, the Count of Feng had been standing there quietly, his aura completely concealed. Apart from his conspicuous robes, there was nothing special about him. I've had a taste of the Count of Feng's skills, Liemo replied. When he'd fought Liemo, he'd just broken through to become a second-rank blade master, but he hadn't been able to last more than 10 moves against the Count of Feng. A conservative estimate would place the Count of Feng at around 5th rank. This level of cultivation was definitely at the top of the Qinyuan continent. Liemo wasn't familiar with how strong the true experts of the continent were, so he couldn't determine Fengbo's rank or status on the continent. However, he was certain that he was one of the strongest of the 7 cities. If the Feng family sends out the Count of Feng again, the 7 cities probably won't have a match for him, Liamo said. Feng Yanyang shook his head. The tournament is held once every 3 years. The same person can't ascend the stage consecutively. Liamo picked up his teacup and slowly sipped his tea. Feng Yanyang continued, as a second-rank blade master, you're one of the strongest cultivators in the 7 cities. The Thunderbolt Flame won't waste your cultivation. He'll definitely send you out. In that case, what would you like me to do, Patriarch Feng? Liamo asked, glancing at the clear, emerald tea in his cup. The Feng family will send Feng Yicheng to the stage. I hope that the 2 of you can join forces to defeat the other 7 cities' warriors, and then... Feng Yanyang leaned forward slightly and lowered his voice as he explained his plan to Liamo. This will deal a heavy blow to the Thunderbolt family, Feng Yanyang said with a smile. If I do that, I'll definitely anger the Thunderbolt Flame, Liamo said. Patriarch Feng, you have to promise me something. Please speak. I want you to bring my 2 friends out of the Thunderbolt family unharmed, Liamo said. After reaching an agreement with Feng Yanyang, Liamo secretly returned to the Thunderbolt Manor. The next morning, he received a summons from the Thunderbolt family. Liamo stood in front of the Thunderbolt just as before, neither servile nor overbearing. Have you recovered from your injuries? The Thunderbolt asked. More or less, Liamo replied coolly. May I ask why you're here, Patriarch Feng? The Thunderbolt raised an eyebrow. Didn't anyone tell you that slaves should refer to themselves as servants? Liamo raised an eyebrow imperceptibly. No one told me when I became a slave of the Thunderbolt family. Thunderflame squinted his eyes and said angrily, what kind of place do you think my Thunderflame clan is? Who do you think you are? The Thunderbolt had a domineering personality, and he wouldn't allow anyone to rebel against him, even if Liamo was useful to him. Of course I know. Liamo didn't seem to care about the Thunderbolt's anger. The Thunderbolt family is the hegemon of the 7 cities, and I wish to serve them as a warrior. Patriarch Feng, would you be willing to accept my allegiance? Upon hearing Liamo's words, the anger on Thunderflame's face slowly dissipated, and his furrowed brows relaxed. Weren't you unwilling to submit all this time? Why are you suddenly pledging your allegiance to me? The Thunderbolt asked. He didn't think that Liamo would willingly submit to him. Liamo's expression turned serious. I know that you're currently searching for a woman named Yunruoyan, and I'm sure you've already heard from your son that she's my wife. So you wish to negotiate with me? A trace of anger surfaced on the Thunderbolt's face once more. Why are you so sure that she's still alive? It's not what I believe. Thunderflame replied, that's what the higher-ups have determined. If we don't find Yunruoyan soon enough, we won't be able to answer to them. Thunderbolt Baishan's expression turned cold as he said, son, increase the manpower and search again. Yunruoyan had been with the troop all this time, but she had once again disguised herself as an ugly girl and an old woman who worked in the kitchen. She had managed to easily deal with the guards of the Thunderclap family several times. Roughly half a month later, Liamo headed to the darkest reaches of the city, accompanied by Thunderflame, and a black-clothed, masked woman. That woman was the mute girl who had been assigned by Thunderflame's side to keep an eye on Liamo ever since he had left the city lord's manor. She had been following Liamo like a shadow. Liamo could tell that she was an early 9th-rank blade master, which wasn't considered high among the warriors of Thunderflame's manor. However, her concealment techniques were superb, and she was constantly shrouded in a ghostly aura. Sometimes she would appear and disappear so suddenly that even Liamo couldn't detect her. The mute girl's existence had caused Liamo quite a bit of trouble. Originally, he could have communicated with Yunruoyan through Mo, but but with the mute girl's presence, the two of them had almost completely lost contact. Yun Ruoyan had also learned from Feng Yicheng that there was a black-clothed woman by Li Mo's side. After thinking for a long while, she came up with a solution. "Are you going to head to the darkest reaches of the land as well?" Yun Ruoyan asked Feng Yicheng. She had long since learned about the tournament and the situation in the darkest reaches of the land from Li Mo's letter, as well as that Feng Yicheng was the representative of the Feng family. "Yes, I'm here to inform you that we'll be leaving tomorrow," Feng Yicheng replied. "I'm going with you," Yun Ruoyan replied. Feng Yicheng hesitated for a moment, but before he could respond, Yun Ruoyan continued, "Didn't you say that Li Mo's ghostly companions were troublesome? I have a way to deal with them." Feng Yicheng finally agreed to let Yun Ruoyan accompany him to the darkest reaches of the land. The next day, the two of them set off. Lin Qingchen and Lin Tianming were brought to the Feng family and made appropriate arrangements for them. The troupe began their activities in the smaller towns around Thunderbolt City. These towns all belonged to the Thunderbolt family, and as far as Andy Hong knew, quite a few of the smaller families had submitted to the Thunderbolt family's tyranny. The troupe's next task was to rope these smaller families into the Feng family's camp. Yun Ruoyan followed Feng Yicheng to meet up with Feng Yanyang, as well as the Count of Feng. The Feng family's affairs were left to Feng Mian. At first, Yun Ruoyan had thought that the tournament was just an ordinary tournament, but after seeing the Feng and Thunderbolt families mobilizing such a large force, she had a new understanding of the tournament. At the same time, she began to worry about Li Mo. As a result, Yun Ruoyan requested to catch up with Li Mo and the others first. Feng Yanyang agreed and had the Count of Feng escort her. Because it was a deliberate pursuit, it only took a day for Yun Ruoyan to arrive at the small town where the Thunderbolt family was staying for the night. "Count of Feng, I'd better go find Li Mo on my own," Yun Ruoyan suggested. "I heard that the woman's cultivation isn't very high. I'm confident that I can deal with her. That woman's forte isn't cultivation. Even I'd have trouble seeing through her concealment techniques, let alone a mid-ninth rank blade master like you." The Count of Feng's first words were a blow to Yun Ruoyan's confidence. "How about this? I'll give you a helper to deal with that woman." Count of Feng waved his hand in the air, and a black figure appeared out of thin air. Yun Ruoyan's eyes widened in shock. The figure that had appeared was none other than the ghostly figure that bore a grudge against Yun Ruoyan and the others. "Fengbua, what's he doing here?" Yun Ruoyan subconsciously assumed a defensive stance. "Don't worry," the Count of Feng laughed. The Count of Feng smiled. "I'll have to thank Li Mo for that." This ghostly figure possessed a rather seductive woman's corpse in an attempt to seduce the young city lord. Thanks to Li Mo's warning, I was able to subdue it in time and make it my own. I originally intended to give it to Li Mo, but it's the same to you now. The Count of Feng took off a ring from his finger and handed it to Yun Ruoyan. "I've refined this ghostly figure into this ring. Now, it can't stray more than half a kilometer from this ring, or it'll turn to dust." Yun Ruoyan took the ring, and the ghostly figure immediately floated to her side. Seeing that it was no longer as arrogant and strange as before, Yun Ruoyan asked the Count of Feng for the reason. The Count of Feng told Yun Ruoyan that evil spirits were afraid of being refined. This ghostly figure's consciousness had already been refined by the Count of Feng, and it was now nothing more than a puppet. As long as one infused spiritual energy into the ring, they would be able to summon it for their own use. In addition, the ghostly figure couldn't actually attack, and could only release poison. Now, however, the Count of Feng had refined a ghostly blade that could kill without leaving a trace. In short, the ghostly figure was a lethal weapon. Its cultivation isn't very high, so it's only suitable for sneak attacks, the Count of Feng added. Yun Ruoyan put the ring on her finger, and the specter disappeared into it in a flash. Yun Ruoyan cupped her fists at the Count of Feng, then leaped down the building. A red glow appeared beneath her feet as she headed toward the inn where Liamo and the others were staying. In order not to attract attention, Yunruoyan put away the scarlet-eyed spiritual sword when she was still some distance away from the inn. Then, she carefully hid in a corner of the inn's walls. Yunruoyan had Chucho contact Liamo. Liamo was immersed in cultivation, but when he heard that Yunruoyan was outside the inn, he immediately awoke from his cultivation. Why are you here? Didn't I tell you to go to the Feng Manor with Qingxue and uncle? Hurry up and go back. Liamo was a little anxious and angry. His was becoming more and more disobedient. Liamo, do you think mistress will listen to you? Chocho's voice was as helpless as Liamo's. Yunruoyan's actions had put her life on the line several times, and Chocho hoped that she would listen to Liamo's advice. No, she won't. Liamo couldn't help but facepalm. Yunruoyan didn't seem to listen to him at all. Chocho, can you ask if that woman is around? Chocho asked Liamo. Chocho told Liamo that the woman was invisible at night, but would appear at the slightest sign of trouble. What a ghost! Yunruoyan snorted. Mistress, let the ghostly figure do it, Chocho suggested. The Count of Feng said that the ghostly figure's cultivation isn't very high, and that she's only suitable for sneak attacks. I'd like to meet her myself. Yunruoyan retracted her aura as she spoke, then climbed up the walls of the inn to the 3rd floor, where Liamo was staying. Although she wasn't completely confident that she'd be able to subdue the ghostly figure, it wouldn't be difficult for her to escape. As soon as Yunruoyan stepped onto the 3rd floor, she felt a gust of wind from the back of her neck. Who's there? A hoarse female voice called out. Just like that, Yunruoyan remained by Liamo's side as the mute girl. A few days later, the Thunderflame's entourage entered the darkest reaches of the night. Yunruoyan's impression of this place was many times more lively than Pai City. It reminded her of the Yuelu villa she had visited before. Inns, restaurants, brothels, and gambling dens were everywhere, and the people on the streets were all different. It was an interesting sight to behold. The entourage entered a rather luxurious inn, and the guest room that Liamo had prepared for them was quite spacious and luxurious. As soon as Yunruoyan entered the room with Liamo, she hurriedly removed the black cloth covering her face. At the same time, she had the ghostly aura dissipate from her body. It's so suffocating. Yunruoyan stretched her body. Although she had spoken casually to Liamo, it was inevitable that she would be a little nervous under the watchful eyes of her enemy. After a few days, she was exhausted. Liamo sat down on a soft couch and pulled Yunruoyan to sit on his knees. He massaged her shoulders gently. Bear with it for a few more days. Once the tournament is over, we'll leave the Thunderflame household. Yunruoyan planted a light kiss on Liamo's lips. To be able to feel his presence at all times, to be able to warm each other at all times, even if it was dangerous and exhausting. Someone's coming. Just then, the two of them simultaneously sensed an aura approaching from afar. Then, they heard voices coming from outside. Lord Liamo, it was one of Thunderflame's subordinates. What's the matter? Liamo asked. The Patriarch wants you to go over. Chapter 370. Alright, I'll be right there. Is the mute girl here? The warrior asked again. Yunruoyan had no choice but to summon her ghostly apparitions again to deal with the warrior, who told her that Thunderflame had sent the mute girl and Liamo to see him together. He's probably here to talk to me about the tournament. After the warrior left, Liamo turned to Yunruoyan worriedly. I don't know why you're going, but could it be that you've noticed something amiss? You shouldn't go. If he knew who I was, he wouldn't have invited me so politely. Yun Ruoyan stood up from Li Mo's knees, put on her black veil, and twisted her ring. A wisp of ghostly energy seeped out of the ring and enveloped her body. The two of them arrived at Thunderflame's guest room, where Thunderflame sat at the head of the table, and Thunderflame sat at the head of the table. Thunderflame sat at the head of the table, and Thunderflame sat at his right. Both of them looked arrogantly at Li Mo. The Thunderflame father and son had always wanted to tame Li Mo, but even if they couldn't tame him, they still had to make use of him. Because of Thunderflame father and son's domineering personality, they couldn't stand Li Mo's nonchalant attitude. "May I know why you've summoned me, Patriarch?" Li Mo asked. "There's only 3 days left before the tournament. How are your preparations going?" Thunderflame didn't speak, but Thunderflame did. "Cultivation is a matter of time. A few days isn't important," Li Mo replied coolly. Thunderbolt Batian raised his eyebrows and said, "You sound very confident." "I'll definitely do my best," Li Mo replied concisely. "Good. In that case, I'll be depending on your performance in 3 days." Thunderflame finally spoke up. "I've summoned you here today because I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "We've discovered traces of your wife, Yun Ruoyan, in a small town between the Wind and Thunderflame cities. Someone said that they've seen her on the streets." "Oh." Li Mo pretended to be concerned. "Where is she now?" "By the time we received the news, she was already gone. However, as long as we can find her, it'll only be a matter of time before we find her." Li Mo knew that Thunderflame was using Yun Ruoyan to threaten him. He laughed coldly in his heart, but his expression remained stern. "Master, you promised me that you would let this matter go. I hope you will keep your promise." Pai Batian revealed a proud expression and said, "That will depend on your performance in 3 days. If you can take first place in the 7 cities, then your wife's offense will be forgiven. If you lose, then don't blame my Pai clan for following the rules." Li Mo narrowed his eyes. Even though Yun Ruoyan was safely by his side, he didn't like it when others used her to threaten him. In Li Mo's mind, Thunderclap Batian was someone he had to get rid of. "Don't worry, young lord, you're well aware of my cultivation. I'm sure the Thunderbolt family's spies have already investigated whether there's anyone in the 7 cities who's a match for me." Li Mo purposefully reassured the Thunderbolt father and son. "That's good, hee. Thunderflame smiled in satisfaction. As Li Mo left, Thunderflame suddenly asked Yun Ruoyan, who had been standing silently behind Li Mo, to stay behind. Li Mo's footsteps paused imperceptibly before he walked out of the room. "Has Li Mo been acting strangely these past few days?" Thunderflame asked. "Nothing out of the ordinary, except for a small thief who appeared on the road. I've already dealt with him," Yun Ruoyan replied in a low voice. "Keep an eye on him, but don't anger him," Thunderflame instructed. "There's one more thing I need you to do." Yun Ruoyan nodded and left the room in a flash. However, she purposely left the ghostly apparition on the spot until she left, leaving the illusion of ghostly apparitions in front of the Thunderclap father and son. After Yun Ruoyan left, Thunderflame turned to Thunderflame and asked, "Why do I feel like the mute girl is different from before? Her ghostly aura is thicker, but so is her human aura. Perhaps it's a sign of her mastery of ghostly techniques." Thunderflame's brows relaxed, as though he didn't find anything amiss. As soon as Yun Ruoyan walked out of the corridor, she saw Li Mo leaning against the railing of the house. Although he seemed relaxed, Yun Ruoyan could still see the anxiety and worry in his eyes. Yun Ruoyan looked at Li Mo, her eyes curving into a smile as the two of them entered the guest room. As soon as the door closed, Li Mo pulled Yun Ruoyan into his embrace. "I'm fine, aren't I?" Yun Ruoyan patted Li Mo's chest lightly. Li Mo finally spoke. Li Mo finally spoke. Li Mo, have never been afraid of anything in my life. I used to think that there was nothing in this world that could strike fear into my heart, but I've never been afraid of anything. But you've become my only worry and fear. Slaughtering King, I've almost forgotten how you used to be immune to all poisons, but I like you even more now. Yunruoyan smiled. I grew up listening to your stories, imagining you to be a monster with 3 heads and 6 arms, one who kills without batting an eyelid. Monster. Li Mo repeated, dissatisfied. Clearly, those stories are all told by adults to trick children, Yunruoyan hurriedly corrected. Yunruoyan hurriedly replied, not only is my husband not a monster, but he's also a man of flesh and blood, a true and loyal man, a great hero. This time, it was Li Mo's turn to laugh. By the way, Li Mo. Yunruoyan lifted her head from Li Mo's embrace. Thunderflame has asked me to do something. What is it? Li Mo asked. He wants me to investigate Feng Yicheng and then report back to him, Yunruoyan replied. As it turned out, Thunderflame had collected all the information on all the warriors who might be participating in the tournament, except for Feng Yicheng. Feng Yicheng had come from a lowly continent with Li Mo and the others, but he wasn't as unfamiliar with the continent as Li Mo and the others. He'd gone straight to the Feng family as soon as he'd arrived, and the Feng family had protected him well. Thunderflame hadn't been able to find out anything about him no matter how much effort he'd expended. Thunderflame's only impression of Feng Yicheng was the cultivation he had displayed during his duel with Li Mo at the banquet. Feng Yicheng cultivated a wood-attuned external spiritual technique, and from the way he had displayed it, he was definitely at least a 9th-rank blade master. Thunderflame could also tell that he hadn't used his full strength during his duel with Li Mo. According to Thunderflame's information, none of the warriors from the other 5 cities were a match for Li Mo. Only Feng Yicheng was unsure of, so Thunderflame had Yunruoyan disguise herself as a mute girl and investigate him. Have Mo send a message to Feng Yicheng. It's best if he divulges some irrelevant information to me so that I can fool him, Yunruoyan instructed. Li Mo walked to a table and wrote a note for Mo to deliver. He then looked up at Yunruoyan and suddenly asked, would you like to see the night view of the darkest lands? Unlike the 7 cities, the darkest lands didn't have a curfew, and all sorts of people from the 7 cities could party here all night long. Walking along the brightly lit streets, Yunruoyan was surrounded by a cacophony of people. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles, and Yunruoyan's mood brightened considerably. She had been through a dangerous period of time, and the bustling scene before her made her feel as if she were back on the Qinyuan continent. Li Mo, Yunruoyan maintained a distance from Li Mo, but with the bustle of the city, as long as they didn't look at each other, they wouldn't have to worry about being spied on. Why do you think this place is called the Darkest Lands? It's clearly a paradise. Yunruoyan didn't understand. The more prosperous a place is, the more likely it is to be hiding some unknown darkness. Li Mo continued walking forward. What darkness is there? Yunruoyan asked. This darkness can't be seen at a glance, but it's definitely there. Li Mo slowed down slightly, and Yunruoyan followed suit. Li Mo's voice was low and slow, but Yunruoyan could hear it clearly amidst the hubbub of the crowd. Actually, this was what my father told me when I was young. That was why my father took my mother to avoid all the conflicts and darkness in the Ueli mountain range to establish the Orc Kingdom. He originally wanted his people to live and work in peace, but he didn't expect that they still couldn't avoid conflicts and darkness. So no matter how strong the enemy is, or how dark the road ahead is, there's no point in running away. Yunruoyan sighed. Ever since I was young, I knew that only by standing at the peak of power could I truly escape from the darkness and protect those I love. Li Mo's voice turned from low and slow to resolute. On the Qinyuan continent, Li Mo had already stood at the pinnacle of power and influence. But here on the Heiyuan continent, where experts were everywhere, he was still a long way from reaching the peak. This was especially true after his battle with Fingbua and Thunderflame, which had left him feeling utterly powerless for the first time in his life. He didn't want to experience such a feeling again, and he didn't want the people he loved to experience the same thing. Yun Ruoyan naturally understood Li Mo's meaning. She quickened her pace and squeezed Li Mo's hand imperceptibly, then quickly let go. At the same time, her gentle but resolute voice rang out. Li Mo, I don't want to be your golden sparrow. I want to face all difficulties by your side, grow stronger together, and stand at the peak of power together. Li Mo stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Yun Ruoyan, just in time to meet her gaze. Their resolute gazes intertwined, and two happy smiles blossomed on their faces at the same time. I'll take you to an interesting place, and then I'll take care of what I need to do, Li Mo said, and the two of them once more began walking along the busy streets. After 5 minutes, the two of them entered a place called the Pleasure Cave. As soon as they entered, Yun Ruoyan's brows furrowed. The so-called Pleasure Cave was a combination of a gambling den and a brothel. I've arranged to meet Feng Yicheng here, Li Mo explained. Seeing that Yun Ruoyan had stopped, Li Mo explained, if Thunderflame knew that Feng Yicheng was such a debauchee, I'm sure he'd be more at ease. Only then did Yun Ruoyan relax and follow Li Mo inside. Chapter 371. When Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan entered the cave, two figures that had been tailing them from afar stopped in front of the entrance and looked inside. The two of them actually entered the cave. One of them rubbed his nose. We don't even have enough spirit crystals to walk around in there. What should we do? You stay here and keep an eye on them. I'll go back and report to the young city lord. Perhaps we'll even be able to get some spirit crystals and have some fun here at night. Alright, come back as soon as possible. I'll stay here and keep an eye on them. Flying on swords wasn't allowed in the darkness, so the man in the warrior's robes ran back the way he had come. These two low-ranked warriors had been sent by Thunderbolt Batian to follow Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan. Although Thunderbolt Flame didn't think that there was anything wrong with Yun Ruoyan's disguise as a mute girl, Thunderbolt Batian felt that something was amiss. As a result, he had casually sent two low-ranked warriors to follow them. Young City Lord. The warrior reported to Thunderbolt Batian. Lord Li Mo and the mute girl have entered the cave together. Is there anything strange about them? Thunderbolt Batian asked. There's nothing strange about them walking along the streets, one in front of the other, the tall warrior replied. But the two of them have entered the cave, and we don't have enough spirit crystals to enter, so we can only wait outside. Thunderbolt Batian glanced at the warrior, but he thought to himself, Li Mo, who seemed so stubborn, would actually wander around such a place. He suddenly became interested, so he stood up and said, lead the way. This young master hasn't been to this extreme dark land for a while. This must be your first time here, isn't it? Why do you look so unfamiliar? As soon as Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan entered the main hall of the cave, a bewitching madam walked up to them and greeted them. The madam had a strange fragrance about her, and she was younger and prettier than the ones on the Qinyuan continent. Without another word, Li Mo took out a cloth pouch from his robes and handed it to the madam. The madam's eyes widened as she accepted the cloth pouch. Sir, please come in, please come in. Ah, this young lady, that's my friend, Li Mo replied. Oh. The madam beamed with joy and said, it doesn't matter. In our Xiaoyao cave, as long as there are spirit crystals, anyone can have fun here. I wonder if the two of you are looking for pleasure or pleasure. What's the difference? Li Mo asked. If you're looking for pleasure, we've got some pretty girls and handsome boys for you to choose from. If you're looking for entertainment, there's a gambling den right next to us. The madam's gaze moved from Li Mo to Yun Ruoyan. Let's have fun. Li Mo replied stiffly. Seeing Li Mo's awkward expression, Yun Ruoyan tried not to laugh out loud. Liemo and Yunruoyan were led directly to a large hall on the side. Separated only by a wall, the scene on the other side was completely different. There was no flirtatious talk, only loud shouting. One of the loudest voices was none other than Qin Feng. Yunruoyan immediately spotted him in the crowd. Although Qin Feng was still dressed in his usual brocade robes, his gentle and courteous demeanor had undergone a complete transformation. His entire body was squatting on top of the gambling table, his sleeves rolled up high, one hand holding the dice cup, the other supporting the gambling table, his face red and neck red as he shouted, "Big, big, 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 once you place your bet, you can't back out." Yunruoyan didn't react for a moment, and her eyes widened. "What do you think?" "I'm sure this is exactly what the Thunder Father and Son would want to see," Liemo commented. Liemo strolled around the casino twice, and Yunruoyan followed him from a distance. Although the casino was noisy, Yunruoyan saw quite a few men dressed in the Feng family's warrior robes standing in the corner. All of them had a strong aura, and their cultivation was not low. With these people holding the fort, no one would dare to behave atrociously here. As soon as Yunruoyan and Liemo entered, Feng Yicheng saw them. He glanced at them briefly before exchanging a glance with Liemo before turning his attention back to the dice in front of him. "That guy's only been here for less than 2 hours, and he's already won so much. Why isn't the head manager of the Feng family's gambling den coming out to greet him?" Yunruoyan heard someone talking about Feng Yicheng. Although Yunruoyan had never been to a gambling den before, she had been a daughter-in-law of the Pei family in her past life. The Pei family not only owned a weapons shop, but also a gambling den. As a result, she knew that if someone won too much in a gambling den, there would be an expert who would come out to deal with them until they spat out all of their winnings. "You don't know, do you?" Another person continued. "This young master is the Feng family's favorite, and I've heard that he's one of the warriors they'll be sending out for the upcoming tournament. Even now, the Feng family is in charge of the entire territory, and he's still winning with his family's money." "Oh, so that's how it is." That person suddenly realized, "I just didn't expect the Feng clan to have such a playboy. This time, Feng Yicheng's name is going to be famous among the warriors of the 7 cities, Yunruoyan thought. What an unusual way to make an entrance. Just one gambling session wasn't enough to achieve Feng Yicheng's goal. 2 hours later, he returned to a nearby brothel. Liemo and Yunruoyan followed Feng Yicheng back to the brothel. By this time, many of the gambling den's patrons had also entered the brothel, and the originally not too crowded brothel suddenly became crowded. This is his territory, after all, and he should have a way to save them. These 3 women didn't seem to be very old. By the time the matter was over and they went to the Feng family to save them, who knew what kind of state they would be in? Yunruoyan couldn't help but sigh. In the end, the 3 beastkin women were bought by a plump, middle-aged man for 500 spirit crystals. The second cage contained 3 men that Yunruoyan didn't recognize, and they were bought by a rough-looking man who couldn't be identified as a man or a woman. Across from her, Feng Yicheng was flirting with the 2 prostitutes by his side, while Liemo's back was straight, as if he were sitting in court. Yunruoyan stood silently behind Liemo, feeling a little bored. Look at the box on the left." Liemo's voice suddenly rang out in Yunruoyan's ears. Yunruoyan turned to the left. A familiar figure flashed by, then was quickly obscured by a screen. "It's Thunderbolt!" Yunruoyan exclaimed. "That's right," Liemo replied. "Feng Yicheng's been putting on a show, and the main character has finally arrived." Next up are female slaves from the low-tier Qinyuan continent. Women from the Qinyuan continent are known for their petite figures and gentle temperaments, making them ideal for warming the bed. The starting bid is 150 spirit crystals, the young man called out as he used a long rod to remove the black silk cloth from the carriage. Mo's already strayed back immediately tensed up, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but take a step forward. Because the silk cloth had been removed, revealing a man that Mo and Yun Ruoyan knew. What do you think? Good, this is a good idea. We don't need to use weapons, and we can decide who's better. The tournament is in 3 days, so let's use our wealth as a warm-up and watch the show in advance. The crowd below the stage jeered. Most of them had come for the tournament in 7 days. The Feng and Thunderbolt clans were supposed to be the highlight of the event, and being able to watch the two clans fight in advance was bound to excite the spectators. So, Feng Yicheng challenged. Do you dare? Mo's expression was awkward, and he didn't respond. Oh, the Thunderbolt clan hasn't had any income from the Zenith Darkness for the past few years. Have they run out of money? Feng Yicheng laughed. If that's the case, young masterly, don't force yourself. I'll gladly accept these 3 girls. But don't boast about the Thunderbolt clan being the dominant clan in the future. Behind the screen, Thunderbolt Baishan's mouth twitched. The Thunderbolt clan's position as the dominant clan was more important to the Thunderbolt clan than anything else. For the sake of this position, the Thunderbolt clan had done everything they could. How could they tolerate someone tarnishing their clan's reputation in front of so many people? Thunderbolt Badian beckoned for a warrior beside him to come over. Thunderbolt Badian whispered something into his ear, and the warrior nodded and walked out of the booth. Mo's gaze casually swept across Thunderbolt Baishan's booth. When he saw that one of the figures behind the screen was missing, his lips curved in an almost imperceptible smile. However, his tone was slightly discouraged. Unfortunately, I came out in a hurry and didn't bring enough spirit crystals. Before Mo could finish speaking, a voice rang out from behind him. Lord Mo, please wait. Following this voice, a warrior walked up to Mo's side and whispered a few words into his ear. Mo's discouraged expression immediately disappeared, replaced by a faint smile. Yun Ruoyan was close enough to hear the warrior say to Mo, the young governor doesn't want you to worry about the spirit crystals. You have to win this auction tonight, and don't let the Thunderbolt family lose face. Tell the young city lord not to worry. Mo will definitely beat that brat from the Feng family, Mo replied. After the warrior left, Mo looked downstairs and asked, what was the bid just now? The youth hurriedly replied, young masterly just bid 4,500 spirit stones. 5,000, Feng Yicheng said without hesitation. 5,500. Mo didn't even frown. After all, they weren't the ones who were going to lose face. 6,000. 6,500. Every time the two of them made a bid, the crowd below let out a collective sigh of relief. After all, 500 spirit crystals was enough for a wealthy family to live in luxury for many years. When the bid reached 8,000 spirit crystals, even Thunderbolt Baishan's expression changed. Young city lord. The warrior by Thunderbolt Baishan's side couldn't remain calm either. 8,000 spirit crystals is the amount that our Thunderbolt clan's entire mine can produce in a month. Thunderbolt Badian waved his hand, weighing whether the Thunderbolt clan's reputation was more important or the Thunderbolt clan's reputation. When the bid reached 10,000 spirit crystals, the warrior wiped the sweat from his forehead. Both Lord Mo and that Feng brat seemed to be in a frenzy. There's no point in continuing like this, and there's no point in bickering with a drunken brat. Thunderbolt Badian took a sip of his wine and was about to order Mo to stop. Just then, Feng Yicheng spoke up. Since young Masterly is so insistent, then I'll grant these 3 girls your wish. Cough, cough, cough. The mouthful of wine that Thunderbolt Badian had just drunk got stuck in his throat, causing him to cough. In that case, on behalf of the Thunderbolt clan, Mo will concede. Li Mo's spiritual-powered voice reverberated throughout the hole. The Thunderbolt clan sure is generous. That's right, spending 10,000 spirit crystals to buy 3 slave girls from a low-level continent. How extravagant. What do you know? This is a battle of wealth. Whether it's wealth or martial strength, the Thunderbolt clan has always been the overlord of the Dark Abyss continent. It was only 3 years ago that Count of the Foam clan appeared out of nowhere and defeated the Thunderbolt clan to take over the administration of the Darkest Lands. But the Thunderbolt clan is a long-time hegemon, so they naturally won't let it go so easily. They've won today's battle of wealth, and they're sure to win again in 3 days. Thunderbolt Bashan's anger finally dissipated as he listened to the chatter outside. 10,000 spirit crystals for the Thunderbolt clan didn't seem like too much of a loss after all. Feng Yicheng and Li Mo glanced at each other, then gulped down the contents of the wine gourd beside them. Then, he collapsed in his armchair, the 2 warriors behind him carrying him down the stairs. The 3 of them escaped into a wild forest, where they ate raw meat and drank blood for nearly 2 months. Later, they were caught by a hunting team of warriors and sold here. This was what had happened in the 3 months that Guan Ruliu had been separated from Yun Ruoyan and the others. Where's that Rong Yuashan now? Yun Ruoyan asked. She must have stayed with the Lai family. I wonder how the Lai family will reward her. Guan Ruliu said hatefully. Rong Yuashan is a scourge. As long as she's around, she'll bring us trouble. The sooner we get rid of her, the better. Yun Ruoyan's expression was calm, devoid of anger or hatred, only a thick killing intent. If there's a chance, I'll kill her with my own hands. Guan Ruliu slammed her palm on the bed. She had seen with her own eyes how her juniors had been surrounded and killed, and how Rong Yuashan had stood with the Lai family dogs and watched them die one by one. Every time she thought of that scene, Guan Ruliu wanted to tear Rong Yuashan apart. Don't worry, senior sister Guan, there'll definitely be a chance, Yun Ruoyan comforted. You have to rest well, and the 2 juniors still need your care. As for Rong Yuashan, we'll have plenty of time to deal with her in the future. Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo were about to return to Guan Ruliu's room when someone called out from behind them. Mute girl. Yun Ruoyan stopped and turned around, only to see a youth smiling brightly at her. He was dressed in a short robe, and his body was well built. His face was a little childish, and his short, fiery red hair was particularly eye-catching. It was the 2nd mayor of Thunderbolt City, Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt quickly walked up to Yun Ruoyan and greeted her. Long time no see, mute girl. Yun Ruoyan frowned slightly and nodded in response. Who's that? Thunderbolt waved a hand at Li Mo. I have something to say to the mute girl. Go do what you need to do. Li Mo had been standing sideways, but when he heard Thunderbolt's words, he turned around to face him. Although Li Mo couldn't be considered burly, he was tall and straight, at least a head taller than Thunderbolt. The fact that he was looking down at Thunderbolt made him seem even more childish. Thunderbolt frowned as he looked up at Li Mo. One tall, one short, one looking up at the other, their gazes clashed in midair. Yun Ruoyan could almost hear the crackling of electricity. Before the 2 of them could continue, Yun Ruoyan turned to Li Mo and said in a low, raspy voice, Master Mo, please. Li Mo looked at her, and Yun Ruoyan gave him an almost imperceptible nod. Only then did Li Mo turn and leave. What a strange man. Thunderbolt glanced at Li Mo's back. You're here to keep an eye on him, so he should hate you. Why does it feel like he can't bear to see you go? Second young lord, you must be joking. I follow him closely every day, and he can't wait to get rid of me as soon as possible. I'm afraid he thinks that we're plotting against him, which is why he has such a reaction, Yun Ruoyan said lightly. That must be the case. Thunderbolt didn't doubt her words at all. Second young master, aren't you supposed to be in Thunderbolt City? Why are you here all of a sudden? Yun Ruoyan changed the topic. Tomorrow's the tournament, and father allowed me to spectate. Thunderbolt leaned against the railing and replied casually, it's not every day that you get to see a battle between experts like this. Yun Ruoyan nodded, but didn't respond. She could tell from Thunderbolt's casual tone and movements that he and the mute girl were more like friends than master and servant. Mute girl. Thunderbolt scratched his head awkwardly. I asked you to investigate Yun Ruoyan's whereabouts last time. Did you find any clues? Yun Ruoyan turned to look at Thunderbolt, somewhat surprised that he had asked the mute girl to investigate her whereabouts. For a moment, she couldn't figure out what his intentions were. Thunderbolt was a little younger than Yun Ruoyan, and to Yun Ruoyan, whose mental age was more than 30, he was no different from a child. Although the two of them were enemies, Thunderbolt hadn't really hurt her, so Yun Ruoyan couldn't hate him as much as she hated his father and brother. There are no clues, Yun Ruoyan replied coldly and emotionlessly. Thunderbolt raised his head and sighed. He then slowly said, Mute girl, I originally wanted to help her, but I can't help her now. I wanted to provide her with a shield to protect her from harm on the continent, which was why I drew a picture of her and that icy-faced man at the human hunting ground so that everyone could point them out. I thought that if I brought the two of them to the Thunderbolt Manor, even though that icy-faced man had offended the Thunderbolt family, given his cultivation, he'd be able to get a good job in the Thunderbolt Manor. As for Yun Ruoyan, with my protection, she wouldn't have to worry about anything. But I didn't expect things to turn out this way. If I'd known, I would have let the two of them go. Thunderbolt looked into the distance, his eyes filled with worry and self-blame. I wonder how she's doing now that she's out on her own. And that icy-faced man, he doesn't seem worried at all. He doesn't look like a husband at all. Thunderbolt looked at Yun Ruoyan seriously. Mute girl, why would such a good girl like Yun Ruoyan fall for someone as cold as him? If she's looking for someone, she should be looking for someone as cute and caring as me. Ahem, ahem. Yun Ruoyan's coughing interrupted Thunderbolt's words. She hadn't expected Thunderbolt to fall for her, and she was shocked by his sudden outburst. Thinking that there was something wrong with her throat, Thunderbolt hurriedly asked, Mute girl, what's the matter? Is your throat feeling uncomfortable again? Yun Ruoyan nodded and pulled up the veil on her face again. Chapter 374. Thunderflame's tone was so calm that it was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. Unable to read his father's mind, Thunderflame respectfully replied, Yes, father. I sent someone to follow Liamo and the mute girl yesterday, but they ended up entering the carefree cave, so I followed them. Thunderflame recounted what had happened last night, to which Thunderflame nodded. In fact, he had already heard about the matter from the warrior, but Thunderflame's description was more detailed. I don't know if it's right or wrong, Thunderflame replied. I feel like I'm making a loss. Those three girls aren't worth 10,000 spirit crystals, so it's understandable that you don't think so, Li Ba replied. But it's definitely worth it for the Thunderflame family to regain its reputation as a hegemon. With his father's approval, Pai Batian finally relaxed. Not only has this 10,000 spirit crystals protected the Pai family's reputation, but Liamo has also developed a sense of gratitude toward us. I'm much more at ease with him now. The next day, the day of the seven-city tournament arrived. Yun Ruoyan and Liamo followed the Thunderflame family's carriages to the arena that had been specially constructed for the tournament. The arena was quite grand, and the stone gate to the arena was at least 50 to 60 feet tall. On it was carved a powerful, martial character for Marshal. By the time Yun Ruoyan and the others arrived, there was already a long queue in front of the stone gate. Yun Ruoyan estimated that more than half the population of the darkest reaches of the city had gathered there. There was a guard in front of the stone gate, and every person who entered had to hand over a large bag of spirit crystals. Yun Ruoyan estimated that the bag contained at least 300 spirit crystals. Yun Ruoyan followed behind Li Mo and the Thunderflame family as they were ushered through the stone gate. The head of the Thunderflame family has arrived. A loud and clear voice called out as they entered. After passing through the stone gate and climbing a dozen or so steps, Yun Ruoyan saw a plaza large enough to hold 1,000 people. In the center of the plaza was a circular arena about 30 feet in diameter, and around it were rows of seats for spectators. "This way, please." The guide led them to an independent seat that was closer to the stage. There were a total of 7 independent seats like this, and they were distributed around the arena. By the time Yun Ruoyan, Li Mo, and the others entered, 5 of the 7 seats had already been filled. The Thunderbolt family was the 6th to arrive, and the last seat was reserved for the Feng family, the overseer of the darkness. Thunderflame sat in the main seat in the middle, while Thundersun and Thunderbation sat on either side of Thunderflame. Li Mo sat beside Thundersun, and Yun Ruoyan stood behind him. At this time, the audience seats were also full of people, and the entire martial arts arena was abnormally noisy and lively. What arrogance! They want everyone to wait for their family. Thunderflame said in a mocking tone as he looked at the empty main seat. "Father, there is no need to be angry. After today, the extreme dark ground will return to our hands. The Feng clan will no longer have the qualifications to be arrogant." Pai Badian said. Ice cube face. Yun Ruoyan glanced at Thundersun as he spoke to Li Mo, "Don't die on the arena, or Yun Ruoyan's going to blame it on me." Li Mo glanced at him coldly, but didn't reply. "The head of the Feng family has arrived," a voice announced, and everyone's gaze turned toward the entrance of the arena. Feng Yanyang walked in with the Feng family's entourage. The Feng family members were all dressed in luxurious embroidered robes, and they stood out in contrast to the other warriors in the arena. Feng Yanyang had a smile on his face, and he looked like a wealthy merchant. Feng Bo and Feng Yicheng accompanied him as they walked toward the Feng family's main seat. "Those Feng family members are so boring." "That Feng Yicheng isn't too bad," a youth's voice came from the Lai family's seat not far from Yun Ruoyan's. Yun Ruoyan tilted her head to the side and saw a youth dressed in a purple robe with a somewhat sinister air about him. "Lai Sin, what do you mean?" Thundersun turned toward the youth as well. This youth was the Lai family's young lord, Lai Senior. "Last night, Feng Yicheng and I fooled around in the Xiaoyao cave, and thanks to him, we won more than 1,000 spirit crystals," Lai Sin laughed. "Then the 2 of us went to the brothel, and we had so much fun." Thundersun frowned. "Your sister's still on the brink of death, and you're still in the mood to fool around in the Xiaoyao cave. My poor sister's probably hopeless." Lai Sin sighed, but there wasn't a trace of sadness in his voice. "After being bitten by that monster, she's become a monster as well. If not for father's reluctance to let her go, I would have ordered someone to free her from this torment long ago." Lai Sin lowered his voice, as if he were gossiping. A few days ago, Yun Ruoyan had heard from Guan Ruliu that Lai Yun had been bitten by Zhong Yang, and that she must have been poisoned as well. Most people who were poisoned wouldn't live more than a few hours, but Lai Yun had managed to survive for more than 2 months. What Yun Ruoyan didn't know was that, in order to save Lai Yun's life, the Lai family had brought out all sorts of antidotes and treasures, and the head of the Lai family, Lai Fenglan, had expended so much of his energy that he was absent from the tournament. "Time's up. Warriors of the 7 cities, prepare yourselves. The tournament is about to begin." A chorus of spiritual energy reverberated throughout the entire plaza, and the already noisy plaza became even more boisterous. "I'm betting on the Thundersun family to win. I saw him defeat the slaves of 6 families with my own eyes," someone in the audience declared. It turned out that many casinos outside the arena had set up bets for the past few days. Almost all the spectators in the stands had participated in the bets. You said so yourself that he won against the slaves of the 7 cities. Where is this? This is the 7 cities tournament, and all the participants are the best of the best, someone else protested. I'm betting on the Fong family to win. The head of the Fong family has always been astute, and he can't be wrong about who he chooses. Brother, you really don't know what's going on. Someone else immediately added, this time, the head of the Fong family really made a mistake. Last night, I even saw that white-robed youth from the Fong family in the carefree cave. He spent the entire night in there, and his body must have been drained dry. How could he possibly have the energy to compete? This person's mocking words caused the crowd to roar with laughter. How can you guarantee that the Fong or Thundersun family will win? Someone else asked. I see that the other 5 families have very high cultivations as well. Perhaps the wheel of fortune has turned and the Fong family has gone to the other families. Warriors of the 7 cities participating in the tournament, please step forward. A middle-aged man in a black samurai robe stood on the stage and spoke with spiritual energy. The old man's aura was at its peak, and his voice was abnormally loud and clear, instantly suppressing the chatter of the crowd. Yun Ruoyan couldn't tell how high his cultivation was, but from his aura alone, she could tell that he had broken through to the realm of a sword saint. Yun Ruoyan heard Thunderflame's final instructions to Li Mo, and she gleaned 2 pieces of information from his words. One was that the opponents would be decided by drawing lots. Li Mo would be facing the Wu family, the Wu family would be facing the Jing family would be facing the Hua family would be facing the Qin family would be facing the Lai family would be facing the Fong family, and the Fong family would be facing Li Mo. Although Thunderflame had said that the opponents would be decided by drawing lots, the fact that he had revealed the results before drawing lots showed that he had made preparations in advance. The other piece of information was that the Fong family had also tampered with the results. It could be said that the Fong family and the Thundersun family had worked together to come up with a list that would benefit both families. Thunderflame then explained the situation of the warriors from the other families to Li Mo, who stood up and prepared to take the stage. At the same time that Li Mo stood up, an alluring woman from the Lai family stood up as well. Chapter 375. Even the head of the Lai family, Lai Fenglan, was extremely disappointed in his son, so he had placed all his efforts on his daughter, Lai Yun. But now that Lai Yun was in trouble, he had no choice but to send Lai Sin to represent the Lai family at this important event. What's so great about that? I don't even care about the Pai family. Lai Sin glanced at Pai Batian with dissatisfaction. When the 7 warriors stepped onto the stage, their surnames were pasted on their backs. Li Mo's was pasted with the word Pai, Feng Yicheng's, and so on. As usual, the 7 warriors will choose their opponents by drawing lots, the middle-aged referee announced. There was a black metal box at the edge of the stage, and the 7 warriors stepped forward one by one to draw lots. Li Mo didn't know how the Pai and Feng families worked, but when he unfolded the lot in his hand, he confirmed that it was indeed the Wu family. He glanced at the warrior with the word Wu pasted on his back, a burly man as tall as a mountain. Then, Li Mo and Feng Yicheng exchanged a tacit look. The middle-aged referee explained the rules of the tournament to the crowd. This tournament wasn't a one-on-one tournament, which meant that 7 people would fight at the same time. In the end, whoever managed to defeat their opponent without being knocked down would be the winner. This was also the most interesting part of the tournament. The 7 experts knew their targets, but they didn't know whose targets they were. Each of them had to defend against the attacks of the other 6 at the same time. Not only did such a battle require a high cultivation, but it also required rich combat experience and strong mental fortitude. Of course, if one's cultivation was so high that they could take on 6 people at once, it would be a different story. This was also why the tournament stage was so large. If 7 experts were fighting at the same time, it wouldn't be able to hold up the stage if it wasn't large enough. Each of you has found your opponent, the referee announced. Said the referee. Following the referee's words, their gazes shifted back and forth, waiting for the referee's command. Then, they would launch their attacks at their opponents. The most interesting part of the tournament is that everyone knows who they're up against, but no one knows who's coming after them, Pai Batian explained to Pai Yang. In the previous tournament, he'd been one of the participants on the stage, and in the end, he'd been defeated by Fingbua. Yun Ruoyan stared unblinkingly at the stage. Everyone on the stage had concealed their auras, so as not to reveal their true cultivation. Although she knew that Li Mo's cultivation was the highest among the 7 of them, Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel nervous. Although the others' cultivation wasn't as high as Li Mo's, they were still quite high. Lai Jiao's bewitchment technique revealed that she was at least at the peak of 9th rank. However, this pleasant dizziness was accompanied by an intense pain in his neck. It turned out that in that short moment of dizziness, the Jin clan's warrior had unknowingly appeared behind him, and without saying a word, he had slit his neck with a blade. Bright red blood sprayed onto the stage, eliciting screams from the thousands of spectators. Most cultivators on the Heiyuan continent were 8th rank blade masters, and 9th rank and above were considered above average. Today, the 7 warriors on the stage were all at the peak of the Sword Saint realm. In the eyes of commoners, they were rare experts, and the blood of experts was even rarer. The blood of 2 peak swordsmen was enough to make nearly 1,000 ordinary cultivators scream in excitement. The Hua and Chen warriors were drenched in blood. There were only 5 warriors left on the stage, and the Jing and Wu warriors were still locked in battle. Li Mo remained on the sidelines, as if he had no intention of making a move. Meanwhile, Feng Yicheng and Wu Jiao were finally facing each other. Father, Wu Jiao's target is Feng Yicheng, and Li Mo is Feng Yicheng's target. If Li Mo and Wu Jiao join forces, Feng Yicheng is dead for sure, Thunderclap said anxiously. But it doesn't seem to me that Li Mo has any intention of joining forces with us. Perhaps he doesn't want to team up with Wu Jiao. As long as the other families don't gang up on Li Mo, he'll have a good chance of winning. Thunderbolt's eyes gleamed as he stared intently at Li Mo. As soon as Thunderclap finished speaking, Li Mo, who had been watching from the sidelines, finally made his move. It turned out that the Jin clan's warrior was ultimately unable to defeat the Wu clan's large man. He was sent flying by an iron fist and flew more than 10 meters away. With a thump, he landed on the ground. Although he didn't die, he was still severely injured. It was impossible for him to continue fighting. Another of the 5 warriors was gone. The Wu warrior saw that Feng Yicheng and Lai Jiao were standing together. Although they hadn't made a move yet, Lai Jiao's seductive gaze had reached its peak. Feng Yicheng also stared motionlessly at Lai Jiao. Those who didn't understand would think that the 2 of them were looking at each other affectionately, but those who understood knew that the 2 of them were currently engaged in a battle of life and death in terms of spirit force. Compared to Lai Jiao, the burly man from the Wu family still chose to fight Li Mo. A golden saber slashed toward Li Mo's face. Based on the domineering spiritual energy emanating from the saber, Li Mo estimated that this person's cultivation was between level 1 and 2 peak blade masters, not too far off from Li Mo's level. Although Li Mo appeared to be relaxed, he was well aware of his surroundings. In the face of the domineering and sharp slashes, Li Mo didn't hesitate to take appropriate measures. Chapter 376. Impossible. Thunderbolt and Thunderbolt Batian and Thunderbolt Flame stared at the stage in disbelief. Only Feng Yicheng was left on the massive stage. Li Mo and the Wu family's burly warrior were both lying on the ground outside the stage. The two of them weren't seriously injured. Liemo brushed off the dust on his body and stood up. The Wu warrior also stood up, but his expression was rather puzzled, as if he hadn't realized what had just happened before he was already lying on the ground. Feng Clan won, Feng Clan won. A portion of the audience in the stands who had bet on the Feng family's victory let out thunderous cheers at this moment. What happened? At the same time, many people voiced out their doubts. How did the Wu family and the Thunder family get defeated? How did the Feng clan win? How could that kid from the Feng clan win? Thunderflame glanced at Sui Batian beside him. Apart from disbelief, there was also doubt in his voice. Didn't you say that the kid from the Feng family is an idiot? How did he win? Son doesn't know either. There must be something fishy going on. Thunderbolt Batian was just as shocked by this outcome as Thunderbolt Flame. When two great perfection realm experts battled, anyone with a cultivation lower than the two of them would not be allowed to interfere. Otherwise, they would definitely be injured by the spiritual energy attacks generated during the battle. According to Thunderclap Baishan's understanding, Feng Yicheng's cultivation wasn't higher than Li Mo's and the Wu family's warriors, so it was impossible for him to kick them off the stage. Both Thunderflame and Thunderbolt Batian were aware of this. Therefore, there was only one possibility for such a situation to occur. One of Li Mo and the Wu family warrior had thrown both the opponent and himself out of the arena, and this must have been intentional. Thunderflame was very familiar with the Wu clan and the Wu clan's warrior who was participating in the tournament. The Wu family had always been on good terms with the Thunder family, and Thunderflame was certain that the Wu family would never do such a thing for the Feng family. In that case, the only possible culprit was Liemo. Liemo. Thunderbolt spat out, then turned to Thunderbolt Batian. Summon him. Yes, I will go now. However, Thunderbolt Batian didn't manage to find any trace of Liemo. After the duel, in order to avoid chaos, the defeated warriors were allowed to leave through another passageway. After Liemo left the stage, he left the arena according to plan, where someone from the Feng family would receive him. From there, he would head straight to the hiding place the Feng family had arranged for him, and from then on, he would be at odds with the Thunder family. When Thunderbolt Batian didn't find Liemo in the arena, he immediately had a bad premonition. His voice once again suppressed the noise in the arena. This Feng does not deny that the Feng family won this time by luck. Therefore, this Feng represents the Feng family to decide that during the 3 years of my Feng family's management of the extreme darkness, each shop's management fee will be reduced by 10%. The Feng family had already reduced it by 10% 3 years ago. This time, they lowered it by another 10%. This was an act of giving up a lot of benefits. The moment Feng Yanyang's words came out, the arena was quiet at first, then it was followed by thunderous cheers. Even those who opposed the decision couldn't help but admire the Feng clan head's generosity and shut their mouths. Compared to the Thunder clan's stingy and Thunderflame's iron-fisted, the humble and low-profile Feng Yanyang of the Feng family was obviously more popular. We accept the Feng family's management of the extreme darkness. Yes, we welcome the Feng family to continue managing our joy ground. In response to the cheers, Thunderflame snorted coldly in anger. Humph. Without true strength, you dare to rely on these cheap tricks to win the hearts of the people. Wait until the day my Thundery clan takes over all 7 cities, we will definitely let you see what a true overlord should have. According to their agreement, Yunruoyan would meet up with Liemo soon after, but Liemo and his men waited for her for half a day. Yen must be in danger. Liemo was currently in a private room in the Xiaoyao cave, the place where he had agreed to meet up with Yunruoyan. After waiting for so long for Yunruoyan, Liemo grew unusually anxious. He stood up from his seat and called out to his men, "I'm going to the Feng family to take a look." Li Mo's men couldn't stop him, and he quickly left the Xiaoyao cave. Just then, descended from the sky and landed on Li-Mo's shoulder. Li-Mo frowned as he took out a slip of paper from Mo-Er's lap and opened it. It was Yun Ruoyan's handwriting. As it turned out, Yun Ruoyan had been looking for an opportunity to leave after the duel, but Thunderflame had clung onto her like a piece of candy and kept talking about the duel. By the time Yun Ruoyan had finally shaken off Thunderflame and was about to slip away, Thunderflame called her over again. Because he had lost the duel, Thunderflame's face was frighteningly dark. He stared at Yun Ruoyan for a long while before asking her about Li-Mo's recent movements. His questions were extremely detailed, and he even asked about the situation in the Xiaoyao cave, to which Yun Ruoyan answered all of his questions. Because Yun Ruoyan's body was shrouded in ghostly energy, Thunderflame hadn't suspected her at all. When Thunderflame told her to leave, Yun Ruoyan finally had a chance to escape. However, she suddenly changed her mind. The adventurous spirit that she developed at some point in time gave her a bold idea. Since Thunderflame hadn't realized that she was a mute girl, she could stay behind. On one hand, she could help the Feng family gather intelligence, and, more importantly, she could find an opportunity to find out the whereabouts of her father, Long Yin, from Thunderflame. That year, Long Yin had been captured by Thunderflame, which meant that he might be the only person who knew of her father's whereabouts. If she left just like that, Yun Ruoyan didn't know if she'd have another opportunity to infiltrate the Thunderflame household. As a result, she decided to stay behind at the Thunderflame's inn and have Mo-Er deliver a letter to Li-Mo, informing him of her bold idea. She even told me not to worry, and she even told me to leave on my own. Has she forgotten whose wife she is? Li-Mo muttered to himself coldly, suppressing his desire to rush to the Feng manor and drag Yun Ruoyan out of there. At this moment, Li-Mo was both angry and worried about Yun Ruoyan's impulsive behavior. More than anything else, he felt as if he had used up all of his helplessness on Yun Ruoyan, and he was beginning to feel like he had overexerted himself. Yun Rongyan, you'd better come back in one piece, or I'll... Li-Mo clenched the note tightly in his palm. Thunderflame had brought a group of warriors from the Thunderflame family to search through every nook and cranny of the Thunderflame family, but they hadn't found a trace of Li-Mo. By now, he was certain that he and his father had been fooled by Li-Mo and the Feng brat. After confirming this, he immediately returned to the inn to report the situation to Thunderflame. Li-Mo and the Feng brat. When Thunderflame heard Thunderflame's report, he was so angry that his face turned red. To think that I, Thunderflame, would fall at the hands of these two brats. Father, I think there's something fishy going on, Thunderflame said. How did Li-Mo and Feng Yicheng get together? The mute girl was clearly keeping an eye on Li-Mo, and the two of them didn't even have a chance to interact. Chapter 377. You mean to say that the problem lies with the mute girl? Thunderflame frowned. That's impossible. I personally sent the mute girl to train as a ghostly cultivator, and I've questioned her in detail, but I didn't find anything suspicious. Father, what you know is the mute girl when she was young. Ever since she went to cultivate with the ghost master, she became estranged from you. After she mastered her ghost art, you and I have never even seen her true appearance. Coupled with the lingering ghost chi, even Thunderbolt's son, who was on good terms with her, probably wouldn't be able to detect anything suspicious, let alone you and me. If she's a fake, then many things make sense. You're saying that the mute girl's a fake. Is there a third person on the continent who knows how to train as a ghostly cultivator other than the ghost master and the mute girl? Father, only the ghost master can determine whether she's a fake or not. It'd be best if you could find the ghost master, Thunderflame Batian replied. And we need his help right now. He's an expert at tracking people in hiding, and it's only a matter of time before we find Li-Mo, all right. Thunderflame nodded. We'll do as you say. Unlike the other families, the Thunderflame family didn't leave the Dark Lands the next day. Even after 3 days had passed since the tournament, the Thunderflame family still showed no signs of leaving. Yunruoyan knew that Thunderclap had been searching for any signs of Liemo in the darkest reaches of the firmament, but his efforts had been fruitless. One day, Yunruoyan was talking to Thunderflame in the hallway. That ice-face Liemo really isn't a good person. Even after a few days had passed, Thunderflame still looked as if he wanted to bite Liemo. They actually dared to collude with the Foam clan, causing our Thunder clan to lose the competition and once again lose the management rights of the extreme dark grounds. Who knows where they are now? How hateful. Yunruoyan stood behind Thundersun, a smug smile on her face as she thought to herself, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Mute girl, you're in charge of keeping an eye on him. Now that he's escaped, father and brother will surely blame you. You've always been cautious, but you didn't notice anything amiss with Liemo this time. He's truly cunning. Yes, he's a little crafty, Yunruoyan murmured, suppressing her laughter. Yunruoyan could tell that Thunderclap's concern for her was genuine, and her opinion of him changed once more. Although she'd once thought that Thunderclap wasn't as vicious as the Thunderclap father and son, he'd still been influenced by the environment he'd grown up in. However, over the past few days, Yunruoyan had discovered that Thundersun was actually quite a simple-minded and kind child. But even so, the two of them were destined not to become friends. Second young master, if there's nothing else, I'll go first. Lady Mute. His voice was even hoarser and deeper than Yunruoyan's fake one, as if something had been stuck in his throat. Anyone who heard it would feel goosebumps all over their skin. Ghostly Master, you should catch up with your disciple, Thunderbolt instructed. The Ghost Master turned to look at Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan felt a cold glare directed at her. She braced herself and stepped forward, bowing to the Ghost Master. This mute girl greets Master. The ghostly master looked at Yunruoyan with a judgmental gaze, and a strange silence descended upon the room. In this momentary silence, Yunruoyan could clearly hear the sound of everyone's breathing. Mute girl, I heard from the young manor lord that you made a major mistake during your mission, the ghostly master finally spoke up. Yes, I didn't notice anything amiss with the defector in time, causing the Thunderbolt family to fail the tournament, Ruoyan replied. Please punish me, master. All right. The ghostly master appeared by Yunruoyan's side in a flash. He stretched out a jet-black, ghostly hand and struck at Yunruoyan's face, catching her completely off guard. Ghostly master. Thunderbolt only had time to call out, but he wasn't able to stop the attack in time. Yunruoyan felt a strong force slapping toward her face. The speed and strength of the blow were so fast that she couldn't possibly withstand it. Yunruoyan knew that even if she tried to resist, it would be futile. As a result, she stiffened her body, closed her eyes, and prepared to gamble. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.